and listen with an open heart, may we discern your will to unite in fruitful outcome. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Bjerregaard?
Here.
Ms. Hamilton?
Here.
Mrs. O'Hara?
Here.
Mr. Ogier?
Here.
Ms. Alves?
Here. We're just going to move open forum down and move executive session up.
I'll make a motion.
Oh, yeah. Executive session is discussion by council vote or other action pursuant to Rhode Island General Law 42-46-5A2, sessions pertaining to collective bargaining or litigation, or work sessions pertaining to bargaining or litigation or potential litigation. 1, Rovedo versus North Smithfield et al. 1-22-CV00367-JJM-PAS.
I'll make a motion to move into executive session.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Bjerregaard?
Yes.
Ms. Hamilton?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Hara?
Yes.
Mr. Ogier?
Yes.
Ms. Alves?
Yes. I'm going to reconvene the meeting. We're just going to move open forum down to, until it reaches 7:30, but we can start on another item. Nothing. Thank you.
Madam President,
Yeah.
before we do that, I just need to make a motion to reconvene back into open session. And then we'll do the other motion to seal the minutes. Or do you want me to do them together?
Do it together.
Okay. And then I'll also make a motion to seal the minutes and let the record reflect no votes were taken.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Biragad.
Yes.
Ms. Hamilton.
Yes.
Ms. Zohara.
Yes.
Mr. Ogier.
Yes.
Ms. Alves.
Yes. All right, let's do number 5. No Smithfield sitting as the Board of Licensing Commissioners. Discussion by council vote or other action on holiday sales license, DBA Firestone Complete Auto Care located at 22 Darling Village Boulevard. Applicant Michelle Charest. Is there anyone here? Madam Clerk, everything is in order?
Yes, she came in last week, so everything's all set.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve the holiday license for Firestone Complete Auto Care, 22 Dowling Village Boulevard, North Smithfield. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Biragad.
Yes.
Ms. Hamilton.
Yes.
Ms. Zohara.
Yes.
Mr. Ogier.
Yes.
Ms. Alves.
Yes. We'll move to new business. Discussion by council vote or other action on abatements / supplementals. Ms. St. George?
Hi. So first I have abatements in the amount of $12,628.22.
Anyone have any questions?
I'll make a motion to approve the abatements in the amount of $12,628.22.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Biragad.
Yes.
Ms. Hamilton.
Yes.
Ms. Zohara.
Yes.
Mr. Ogier.
Yes.
Ms. Alves.
Yes.
Next I have supplementals in the amount of $4,447.46.
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve the supplementals for a total of $4,447.46.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Biragad.
Yes.
Ms. Hamilton.
Yes.
Mrs. Zohara.
Yes.
Mr. Ogier.
Yes.
Ms. Alves.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Discussion by council vote or other action on penalty and tax adjustments. Mr. St. Ange?
So all the ones attached are, almost all of them are out of business, and the last one is, one of them is too old, out of the time range when we can tax them.
And the total amount you're looking for is $14,454.17.
Correct.
Anyone have any questions? I'd like to make a motion.
I'll make a motion. Sorry, make a motion to approve the penalty adjustments in the amount of $14,004, is the 454?
454.17.
17, okay, $14,454.17.
That's a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Biragad.
Yes.
Ms. Hamilton.
Yes.
Mrs. Zohara.
Yes.
Mr. Ogier.
Yes.
Ms. Alves.
Yes. Did anyone want to sign up for an open forum? Want to sign up? I'll just write your name down if you want to go up. Oh, okay.
Okay.
So anyone want to sign up for open forum? No? All right, so open forum, non-agenda items only pursuant to 42-46-6 D. So once again, did anyone want to sign up? Okay. We'll go to the next item. Joint meeting with the Budget Committee, discussion by council vote or other action on budget priorities for the upcoming fiscal year. 1, grant writer, 2, human resource director, 3, facility director, 4, school budget, police station, 5, fire contract, and 6, discussion vote or other action. Who's running this?
We have to call the meeting to order.
Yeah,
Does the budget committee need to call their meeting together, or did you already call your meeting?
Call our meeting to order. Know how to proceed.
So you would open your meeting?
Yeah.
So can we give her the microphone, please?
So I'd like to call the joint meeting of the North Smithfield Budget Committee and Town Council to order. Budget Committee members, would you like to do the roll call?
Christina Early. David Delacruz, President. Bobby Lee Bradford. Joey Savigny. Alfred Puccetti.
Did you want to go up to the podium?
Yeah, I'm going to have Joey. Joey's going to,
Okay.
our vice chair.
Good evening. So basically, we've got some questions. I know Doug had some questions for us. I know we have a grant writer. We're kind of curious is, with this grant writer, are we going to get a list of what they're writing grants for so we can kind of have an idea when we do meet what grants are being written for when we look at the capital budget?
do we have an update on the grant writer?
Anthony, are you going to update on this?
Yeah.
Or?
You want me to update now? Yeah, so we just need to write a contract with the potential bid winner, and then as soon as we have the contract written, we'll send it out to them. Well, we'll have it approved through council, then send it out to them, and then they should potentially start January 1st. And then they would have a meeting with the department heads. Each department head would supply whatever they need, whatever capital projects, and then we would work from there with the grant writers.
Okay, can I make a recommendation that maybe we give the grant writer the 5-year plan from each department and let them look and see what's out there over the next 5 years? Because even if it's a 5 years out, if we can write a grant for it today, let's get it.
Right. May I?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea to have you know ahead of time what grants are being written, what possible matches there could be, and in kind or whatever, you know what I mean? And the 5-year plan, if there is one from every department, which I think is ideal, then you should have that, and the grant writer should have that, and we should have that, so that we know, you know, we're collectively working on a plan, right? So I think that's a great idea.
Correct.
Yeah.
Any other questions on the grant writer from you guys, or you guys are good? All right, moving on with the HR director. Kind of wondering, did we hire one yet? Because we still don't know what's going on with that. And if we haven't, maybe we should hold off on it if we already have somebody doing the job, if we're looking to hire other people for other positions in 6 months. Just a suggestion.
So this is actually an HR manager position, not a director position.
Okay.
And we're just going over and kind of seeing where there might be some overlap or not overlap, or where some items might be able to go into this position. So it hasn't been fully created yet. So
Okay.
there's no one in that position.
All right.
I have a question on this position. If we have someone who's doing the position, who's trained for the position, and there's really been no trouble, they know what they're doing, why are we going forth to incur more debt? If it's not broken, why do we have to fix it?
Just a point of order. I know we do this all the time. We talk about people in positions, but it's really a
It's a
position.
right.
So just for
Oh,
clarity, yeah, I just don't want
I'm
people to feel like
sorry.
we're signaling people
position,
out, whether
person?
good or bad.
Position person?
It's just like a position. So like you have the
Position,
HR position, you have like a
All right.
position now. It's just, should be about the position.
And this position would not be a union position. So with that said, so that's why we're looking at it and reviewing it, and then once the position, then we'll submit it to the personnel board, and then we can go forward with that.
Okay. I know the last few meetings I've been at, there's been a lot of talk about a facilities manager. Moving forward, I don't know where we're gonna stand as a budget committee with the facilities manager, but I do have a thought, and I kinda wanted to run it by the council tonight. Last year, there was issues about janitorial staff in both Town Hall and Scouters Hall. Would it be more feasible for us to find somebody full-time to do the janitorial and also do the building maintenance for both Scouters Hall and Town Hall and create that one position? And not so much a facilities manager, but more of a custodial property manager?
For
And-
what buildings, you said?
For Town Hall and Scouters Hall. And we really don't have a lot of buildings in town to, I think, need a facilities manager. But I do think that if we could combine the janitorial both here and at Scouters Hall with a position that does general maintenance, it might be a better option for us moving forward to combine the two. Because from what I remember hearing last year, is the janitorial service wasn't all that up to par here.
Offhand, do you know what the budget was for that position? Do
I do not.
you know?
It's whatever we were paying right now, right?
19 grand, if I remember correctly?
It's like
19
28.
No,
grand.
it was closer to 30.
Was it? I can pull up the budget. Give me 2 seconds.
Because that could actually be a very good idea.
Well, I guess my question would be, and Mr. Ogier, I think you're the one that has brought this to our attention several times. Are we looking at, that would be a different position, correct? So
Yeah, it'd be a
someone who's a
facilities
facilities manager has the big plan, they look at all the buildings, they look at when things need to be replaced, what things have to be done, what the timelines are, so I think it's more of an overview of, like a 60,000-foot overview, right? And that person would then be able to provide us with a list of what items need to be addressed during a certain time period. Is that your impression?
Yeah, what?
Yeah.
And what buildings, how many buildings? This one, police station, which is neither here nor there, and Scouters. For 3, you're gonna hire one person?
No, we're not talking about person, I'm talking about a position again. So I was trying to address what Mr. Savigny was saying. You know, to incorporate some of those things might not be a bad idea, as long as we have someone who has the ability to oversee, you know, what's being done. The problem we have here in town is we don't maintain our buildings.
Correct.
Yeah. Maybe
And,
we just spent 200,000 to do some repairs from years of neglect at the police station.
yeah.
So,
But that's where the intent was to have another set of eyes that could help with the asset management, help with the repairs, help get that stuff scheduled, maybe work with the grant writer. But I think, you know, it's in the budget process, so all ideas can be on the table, obviously.
so we're talking about the janitorial position, right?
Yeah.
18 grand.
So I think it's 2 separate things, like you're saying, because the 18 grand, that was just for a custodial, but you're talking about an actual facility director, right?
Manager, yeah.
So there'd be like.
Right, and I'm talking about merging the two together
Right.
and making one position that does both.
Yeah.
There seems to be a little disconnect here, though. I think the budget committee is identifying maybe on that position, 30 grand?
18.
18? That's what we pay outside services, right?
Yeah, it's under general government. It's like one of the last ones.
Okay.
Yeah, professional services, 18 grand. It's like 340 per week, and then 1K for
Yeah,
extra
we're not
costs.
gonna find somebody for 18 grand.
So right now, that person, that position cleans, that's it.
That's it.
They don't take a hammer,
Cleans.
they don't fix things,
Cleans.
nothing. Cleans.
Correct.
Okay. Could they sweep up around the Christmas tree, please? No, just kidding. So that's different than someone who would oversee, but I see your point about
It's an outside service.
looking at, right.
I think what we pay now is a janitorial service
Right,
to
that's
come in.
it.
And I think DPW is looking to hire somebody in-house.
Well,
for
correct, and that's what we
relatively the same
discussed
amount of
last year, but I know like if you go to the high rises in Woonsocket, they have property managers that vacuum, wash the windows, take care of the building, but they're also in charge of making sure that the fire alarm system gets inspected, the sprinklers get inspected. They pretty much manage that entire property. And I think that's probably more of what we need than someone who's just overseeing everything. We need somebody to do both. It's
Yeah.
just a thought.
I don't necessarily disagree. I think the facilities manager is just the idea, but if it's a property manager, it's contractual, contracted out. I don't think that's what we should be doing over this time, is figuring out what makes sense for the budget and need.
Didn't we train someone at the, under the, I call it the town bond, that shows my age, to be able to do this job, which has been under the guidance of Mr. Pendergast's department?
That I don't know.
I think he's board certified, and he did everything he needed to do that job. I may be wrong, but
I don't want to
that's what they
speak
tell
for
me.
Ray, but I think at the last meeting, he
He
said
did
we
his
should
best.
continue to move forward with identifying another person. But I think we should get Ray in the room and have him clarify that once and for all.
But I think your point's well taken. Thank you, so, good idea. Streamlining is always a good idea.
Next is the schools. I know you guys have a meeting coming up on Thursday. Maybe you guys can ask them a couple questions for me. They have a lot of restricted accounts. I've asked a couple of times to see if we could get a list of what the restricted accounts are, how much money's in them, and what that money's used for. I have yet to see that, those. I'm just curious as to see how much money is in them. The other question I have when it comes to the schools is, Wide World of Sports is supposedly giving them money for field use. I'm kind of curious where that money's going. So if maybe you can ask them when you meet with them on Thursday.
all that should be open to us.
That's easy enough. I'm sure they
It should be.
should be able to have answers for that.
But that would help us with the budget process when we know what's in these other accounts and what exactly it can and cannot be used for.
Does this include any type of spreadsheet every department should have? As far as expenses, et cetera, within the school department?
We get a binder of the school departments. I mean, there are multiple sections of that. So we have quite a bit of information from the school department. But what happens is, last year, for example, right at the very end, right before you were supposed to approve the budget as a town council, or right before we were approving our budget, or we were coming up with our budget recommendation to you, they sent us a list of capital improvements. And it was literally just a list, many capital improvements, an estimated costs. We had no idea where those costs were derived from, whether they were things we had to go back to the school department and say, are these costs that need to be incurred right away? Are they things that are maybe out 5 years or so? For example, replacing the roof at the middle school was on there. No time frame for when that was supposed to happen. It's going to be a huge expense. The school's relatively new. We were just asking questions. We just didn't have a lot of clarity. They said that they had to replace the baseball field for $100,000. Somebody approached Joey and said, did you approve the $35,000 for the baseball field? And he said, wait a minute, we're getting $100,000 off of their list. Is it really only $35,000 to replace the baseball field? We have no way of knowing. We have no estimates that come from any kind of quote from anyone. So what we would love for the school department to do is think about its capital needs project those out over time, so maybe we can think of a long-term strategy for them for those things that need to be replaced, and maybe come up with some dollars that actually are based in somewhat some precedent or some fact.
I also have another question. When they submit different departments' costs, you know, whether it be band, et cetera, shouldn't there be a spreadsheet and what funds have been spent and for what? Because over the years, teams were supposed to get uniforms every, what, 4 years?
Yeah, right.
So what they did, they keep the ones that weren't completely shot, you know what, and they give that the other part to the middle school, and then by half the girls. So you had kids out in uniforms that you wondered if they were from the same town. There was no accountability, or not
Right.
following a given procedure.
Good point.
A lot of people provided uniforms out of the goodness of the heart over the years. And that should be so noted, where it came from.
Well, we're meeting with them on Thursday, so those are the questions. Maybe Claire
Yeah.
can pose that and get that answer to you.
Yes.
You know, yeah.
Questions on the police station. We're wondering how much money we're looking for repairs.
Too much.
Moving forward, what are we gonna need to budget for that? And on that same thing is, with this new committee coming in, are we gonna have a whole batch of new expenses with them as far as going out with a new architect? Do we need to budget stuff for that? Does anybody have any answers on that yet?
I mean, we're still working with Tecton because there's still parts of the contract that they still have to fulfill with some of the repairs that are still going to be done. So I don't really think we can answer that question right now. It's
Okay.
too early because we've only had like 2 meetings with them. But we'll be sure to keep the budget committee updated on what transpires.
Now, will that come from the council, or does that come from the police chief, those numbers? As far as the
Come from
repairs.
council, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, there should be in his budget maintenance and stuff like
Yeah,
that,
I
but
mean, he's got
as it
his own
relates to the
maintenance. Right.
immediate repairs, that will come from the council.
Okay. The other thing is the fire department. I know there was mention from Doug at the last meeting about wanting to keep taxes level funded. I just want to point out that we only funded 2 firefighters for 6 months. So we've got to fund that other 6 months in this budget. So that's going to be another added expense if we want to keep that guy. Just want to make that known. The other thing is, I don't know when their contract's coming up. There's been a lot of talk about maybe making the fire department municipal. I think it's a great idea. I know it's been tried several times before, but I think it's an avenue that we probably need to look at again. And I also think it could open up potential more grants if we have a municipal fire department. So I don't know when that contract time comes back around. I'd also like a member of the budget committee to sit as a liaison when you guys do meet with them, because when we get the fire department numbers, it's just one number, because it is a contracted group. And at least if we had a liaison, we'd be able to inform the rest of the board as to what all the expenses are that they do incur with that number.
Mr. Savini, did we try to do that? Was it underneath, Linda, when you were administrator, that they try to write? And they said that it would be too difficult, or they gave us some song and dance?
We thought it would cost more if they were municipal than if, rather than contracting out. It would cost more.
But again, the grants are there, and, as we have females, we're gonna have to do something, some of those buildings to provide for this.
You're right, Joe, that was spoken about.
I know it's been
Just
spoken
about
about. 30 years ago, this all started
couple of years it's talked about.
30 years ago with a fire study.
Right.
And I lived through it then, and I know it's come up at least 3 or 4 more times since then. And I think that we're probably at a good point in time now that maybe we can make this happen with the right group of people. So I think it's something, I think Doug's right, I think it's something we need to look at.
Absolutely.
May I ask?
Yeah.
Mr. Zelinski, do you know when the contract, what the status of the contract is, when it's coming
Yeah,
up?
let's start with the appropriations. $3,710,000 this year. The contract will be up in June 31st on 2025.
You said June 1st?
June 31st.
June 30th.
June 30th.
Oh, sorry, 30 days has September, April, June, and
It's okay.
November. All the rest have 31. Thank you. You know, if we get an extra hour of sunlight, 25 hours a day, that'd be good, right?
You never know.
Never know.
And does the council have any questions for us?
Yeah, because I know I spoke out about this at the last, one of the last council meetings ago. So I know you guys are getting ready to go into meeting with each department head and seeing where their needs are, and what their requests are for the upcoming year. I think part of what might be a good exercise to do is to kind of come up with like what's a priority list for the town. What are those mission critical things that we know we can't cut, like contracts for the union, maybe other contracts as well. But what ones, and then what are some of the things outside of those mission critical things? Like what are some of the things that maybe could be cut or renegotiated, kind of those like next layer groups? And then what are some of like more of the discretionary things that maybe we've just been funding and they've kind of creeped up in scope in terms of money wise? And that would kind of, I think, give the town like a good idea as terms of kind of what are we funding, and are those things the right things we should be funding, or should we be reallocating some of those funds into other areas, like maybe new positions or new programs, maintenance, those types of things as well. So that's kind of what I would like to see the budget committee do over the next 6 months.
Okay. It's definitely something we can look into. I mean, I will say this, after being on the budget committee, most of the departments are running bare bones minimum already, so I don't know how many places, plus with the price of everything going up, we'll do our best.
Can you get a list of what your expected meeting dates are, or what you plan on going forward for the?
I believe Tony's working on that for us now.
Okay. Do you know when you'll have that?
That was, remember a few weeks ago, like a month ago, I provide, that's it.
That's it?
Yeah.
That's that?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's, I mean, obviously things are tentative, snowstorm, stuff like that, but that's the calendar date. That's what I
Okay.
want to go with.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Next item is old business, discussion by council vote or other action on ordinance amending zoning ordinance Appendix A, Section 6, Supplementary District Regulations, Section 6.19, Water Supply Protection Overlay District, proposed changes to Code of Ordinance 6.19, Water Supply Protection Overlay District. Mr. Ogier?
So I think to do this right, I'm going to open the public hearing, and then I'm going to read some of the changes that came as a result from the last conversation. So I'm going to make a motion to open the public hearing.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Biragad.
Yes.
Ms. Hamilton.
Yes.
Mrs. O'Hara.
Yes.
Mr. Ogier.
Yes.
Ms. Alves.
Yes.
All right, so I know inside the packet, I submitted some of the changes that had taken place since our last meeting, at the last public hearing. And then there's also a couple small tweaks that came out of the planning board meeting last Thursday, so I'll read those in for consideration of adoption. So under 6.19.1, starting on line 46, you'll see a new section called E, and that is in harmony with the purpose and intent of this ordinance and will promote the purpose of the Water Supply Protection Overlay District. And then you scroll down. And then I think the next major change, I got moving too fast. Under section 6.19.6, prohibited use, starting on line 221, took out emerging and just said contaminants of concern shall be considered and regulated as a health standard became available. That change came as effect of the planning board, so you may not see that one necessarily in there. Another clarification that came out of the planning board meeting, and may differ from what's in the packet, is 6.19.7, pre-existing non-conforming uses, on line 308 to 309. At the end, it says, "And no such non-conforming use shall be expanded unless in accordance with section 6.19.8.1, which is the reference for the exemption criteria for a lawful expansion for a non-conforming use, which I read last meeting. There were no other changes there. And then the real changes that came as a result of a meeting between me, David, the solicitor, and Mark, the planner, was we clarified some of the subjective language, or the language that is kind of hard to enforce from the town's perspective. And so I'm just going to read in the changes. The first one, there was no change, is related to the the standards contained in the 250 RICR 150.053. So that one, there was no change. 2, it had said proper storage of any potentially hazardous material and a hazardous materials contingency plan with a list of things. That language has since been revised, and it says the ability to meet and follow all regulations as defined by EPA and RIDEM related to hazardous waste and reporting as defined by industry and where applicable. Examples include, but are not limited to, EPA Cradle to Grave System, SARA Title III, EPCRA, Emergency Planning and Community Right to Know reporting requirements, DEM and regulations for hazardous waste management, 250 RICR 140.10.1. That is makes it really clear in terms of what we'll be looking for, and is already, you already have to follow that if you're going to handle any of those materials. The next change was about wetlands, and it says the ability, so it's on 476 line. It says the ability to meet the standards contained in 250 RICR 150.15.3 active rule and as amended for freshwater wetlands as defined by RIDEM, and will not adversely affect an existing potential water supply. There were no changes to the next criteria. And then on 484, it says all permitted and special use permits must include a demonstrated use of best available control technology and industry best practices as outlined by either RIDEM, DOH, EPA where applicable. And then the last one was, again, we removed the merging on 511 line. We removed emerging of, or emerging, and said contaminants of concern shall be regulated as health standards become available by RIDEM and EPA, which you're already seeing in DEM and EPA's own regulations and statutes as they update their groundwater active rules. And that, those were the changes that took effect, or what came out of the last planning board meeting and the last public meeting with the town council. I'm happy to answer any questions. Just so everyone knows, we got a memo from the planner today, and it was passed at the planning board level on positive recommendation 3-2. So I just want to put that into the record as well. Does anybody say a problem, David?
I was just looking at what was in the packet and the changes.
There were some changes just based on the feedback. I was telling you that before. There was some feedback around some of the language and making it a little more clearer, I think.
So you're going to need to make a motion.
I'm going to make a motion to, after this, to accept what I just read in. So David, should I make that motion after the public hearing? Yeah, right.
Yeah, you can, before you go into,
Yeah, before we go into the final vote. Okay. Okay. So, yeah, we can open it up, and I'm happy to answer questions as they come up.
Anyone want to get up? Anyone want to speak?
Gary Zofsky, 88 North Main Street. I apologize for failing to attend the last meeting. I just got confused over your agendas. I looked at the state website and saw the the 5:45 meeting and only had one item on it, and I didn't look for a second meeting, so I wasn't here. Apologize. But I did listen to the video, and I have to say some of that was hard to hear. And I don't mean hard from an audio standpoint. It was hard to take in. And I also commented at the planning board meeting last week, and as Councilman Osier indicated, a couple of the changes that he's offered are changes that I recommended. These are complicated issues, and it takes a lot of time to study and to truly understand groundwater resources. I spent 20 years doing so. I don't know everything about it. I guess I'd characterize that I know more than some and less than others. But from its first meeting, the committee and at several meetings thereafter, I've tried to help the committee understand the issues. Recently, I've been criticized for not looking at the detail of the ordinance. I made some extensive comments on the detail of the ordinance on Thursday. I had hoped to do that before you when you first opened this up, I guess 2 weeks ago, but again, I apologize. That's because my focus has been on its impact on the prime industrial zone, on the belief that state and federal laws amply protect our water. I said from the beginning back in 2006 we didn't need this ordinance. I think if we look at what's happened since 2006, the only thing it's done is cause delays for projects that ultimately still were approved. The North Smithfield auto body circumstance in particular, I think, was just chaotic because of this ordinance. And there have been others. One most recently on a storage application that got extended. Removing that area from the ordinance, meaning the industrial zone, was my recommendation in 2006 and in 2020, and it's the same today. I cannot say what the planning board discussed in 2020 because as a town administrator, I did not attend their meetings. And I frankly don't believe it's appropriate for a town administrator or a council member to appear there, especially to be making requests of the board, given that the council in particular is the appointing authority for that board. Reaction to my comments has been to denigrate instead of to try to understand. For example, at your last meeting, comments were made in response to comments that I made about the Hallowell public supply well and the Tiff Road wells. I have advised this group as well as the review board that those wells were out of service. I further advised that the Hallowell unit in particular was out of service at my recommendation, back when I was part of the Water Authority, over concern related to the Stamina site. I never said the wells were decommissioned, though I think Hallowell probably should be, just like the homeowner wells on Maple Avenue. Why would we keep a high-capacity well going? High capacity meaning, in this case, is only about 75 gallons a minute. But why would we keep that going when we told the people on Maple Avenue to shut down all of their wells? We required them to shut down all of their wells and cap them. In any event, as to the Tiff Road well, I've never advocated that that well be closed. I've actually been an advocate for putting it back in service. We need that water. Some just want to believe that there's corruption everywhere and use their own misunderstanding as a basis for their belief. That's unfortunate. One of the other things that was said at the meeting last week that I noted is, I'll ask you to think about what Mr. Benoit said at that meeting about E. coli in water along Route 146. There's expectation that his well has been impacted by nearby residential septic systems. I've said that the existing conditions in the industrial park will preclude Rhode Island Department of Health, and DEM doesn't approve supply wells. Department of Health approves supply wells. It would preclude DOH from approving installation of a well where there is a groundwater challenge. The chlorinated solvents issues at both ends of our industrial park. That is true now and long into the future with the solvent problem, and it will still be the case forever, regardless of any cleanup effort, simply due to the presence of the industrial uses. Just like Mr. Benoit is concerned about the impact of septic systems on his well because of the density of the development behind it, that same premise will preclude the Department of Health from putting a high-capacity community well in our industrial area. The same industrial area that we're looking to ratchet up the criteria for development approvals. Route 146 case provides example of why the Department of Health doesn't approve supply well would not be expected to approve a community-based well in or near the industrial park. Even once the groundwater is clean again, there is risk of impact by a variety of concerns from any densely developed area, just as has been seen on 146. Future community wells will be located in zones of deep, highly transmissive soils located in lesser developed areas. As stated in 2006 and so many times again recently, those are the areas we need to protect. The committee members can be proud of securing their $5,000 grant. That was another thing that was talked about, and I compliment them for that. That's great. But as a demonstration of what business can mean to our town, when I was working with some here present to encourage installation of a water line in 146 during the reconstruction of the highway last year, a member of the business community provided a $5,000 grant in minutes, not in months, in minutes, when we asked for help to be able to pay the bill for a study that was requested by, or was needed to satisfy the interests of the city of Woonsocket. Working with business makes a community stronger. In another issue in the last meeting, Councilman Beauregard asked, what does this revision do? And I have to say the answer just wasn't very clear. I don't know if you felt that you got an answer, but I didn't think you did. I would summarize that it eliminates some of the blatant errors that were part of the highly flawed 2006 ordinance proposed in reaction to Darling Village in favor of an increased use of the special use permit where a planning or zoning board member with a gotcha attitude can single-handedly upend the ability for a good company to exist in North Smithfield. That's what this does. So I want to point out a couple of things that I don't believe Mr. Rosier identified to change in the ordinance. Starting with line 46, that is still there in I guess a modified statement. This is just a nebulous statement that provides the opportunity for confusion, in my opinion. And I'm sorry, but I don't have the latest copy of the ordinance. I'm still working from the one that I was provided before last Thursday's meeting. But I don't think I'll double over anything. On 189 and 190, it says when a lot is partially within the overlay district, the entire lot shall be considered to be located within the overlay district for application purposes. And this is where I look at it and say, we're not looking at the science that puts us here. If something is not in the overlay district, it means the groundwater is running, or surface water is running in the opposite direction. It's not running towards the feature of concern. So why should we regulate that portion of that property at the higher standard? It doesn't make sense to me. It's just trying, these are feel-good terms that maybe make some people feel good, but they won't make an applicant feel good that wants to locate here and help us build a town. I'm glad to see emerging come out of the line 221. On the other hand, that line still is really meaningless. I mean, the Rhode Island DEM and EPA are going to set the standards for groundwater quality. Our suggestion of telling them what to do is okay, but meaningless. The exemptions that are on in 336 to 344, I guess. I feel like what we're doing here is trying to pacify the existing business community. And that in itself says that we're concerned about what we're doing, that we're putting a weight on people that could be a problem to many. And 20% is not big. I didn't hear a change to line 401, where 400 to 402, I guess. It says, at a minimum, the analysis shall fully, well, I'll go back. On 397, the application shall include an analysis by a licensed professional geologist, hydrologist, soil scientist, or engineer, which I am, a licensed professional engineer, by the way, experienced in groundwater evaluation or hydrology to demonstrate that the proposed activity will not be detrimental to the purpose of the district. At a minimum, the analysis shall fully describe the seasonal profile of the volumes and directions of groundwater and surface water flows for pre- and post-development scenarios. The location and use of all present potentially suitable future drinking water supplies that could be affected by uses, and the location and use of any surface and/or groundwater that could be affected by the proposed use. That's financially impossible. Just flat out impossible for an incoming business. Hundreds of thousands of dollars over at least 2 years.
Can I
No, if I could just complete my comments, Madam President. You're looking, this could be taken by ambitious members of our boards to say that we have to go into bedrock to establish groundwater flow directions and forecast them into the future. I mean, I'd love to take on that job. It'd be a retirement program at any one project. I'm not sure what was said just by the councilman over line 430 to line 445, but I'll just repeat what I said to the planning board on Thursday, and that the list that starts with waste manifest down to 445, I simply ask, how does a new business that is coming into town that hasn't operated yet submit those things? If you haven't generated a waste, you don't have a waste manifest. You don't know what that waste is actually going to qualify for. You haven't run the $1,000 worth of tests that might be necessary to profile it and get it qualified to go to a facility. You don't know specifically what your small or large, you might not know what your small and or large quantity generator status might be. You could know some of your hazard inventory, but not all of it. Your air pollution would not be able to be established until you knew what you were doing there and the equipment was running. So much of this is just, they're all feel-good terms that make it sound like we're doing something, and I have to tell you that it's meaningless and potentially hugely problematic to any applicant that wants to locate in the town. I don't think I heard a change to line 465 to 466 that I commented about, and to be able to say that the applicant will have the ability to meet the standards contained in 250 RICR, the DEM rules for freshwater wetlands as defined by DEM, and will prove to not adversely affect any existing, again, language that I'm not even sure how from a groundwater standpoint, a person can make that statement when no groundwater samples have been taken. You don't know what's in the ground at this point when somebody is proposing to come to town, and how they might affect that. Finally, I get to things that I like. And on 472, it says, all permitted and special use permits must include a demonstration and use of best available control technology and best practices as outlined in DEM, DOH, and EPA where applicable. Encouraging people to document that they're going to do what they can to meet the rules is what we need to do. Because in so many ways, what that does is help them to accomplish the task. We shouldn't be looking at this. One of the terms that was used at the last meeting is it's a war. There isn't a war here. What we're trying to do, we should be trying to do is work with people to make sure that they're successful and that our environment is amply protected. There's another line that's good, is 502, proposed location and description of any proposed facilities for refuse storage and disposal. Same thing, encourage people to do the right thing and make sure that they've stated that they're going to do the right thing. In 538 to 542, we go beyond the current rules and require that there be a maximum percentage of impervious area for each zone. And, you know, when this was first put together, there were no stormwater regulations in the state of Rhode Island. They were adopted, this is 2006. They were adopted in 2010. We have voluminous regulations now for every drop of stormwater that lands on an industrial and commercial facility, and some residential ones for that matter too. To the point that this isn't science that we're following. This is an effort to regulate beyond science. With residential storage tanks, we can do more there. One of the critical issues there in terms of issues that I've responded to is frost protection. Outdoor storage of oil needs to be on firm foundation so that tanks don't tip over, because that's what happens. I think, I've said too many times, this isn't the way to do it. The revised program, is it better than what we had in 2006? In some aspects, yes. Is it the way to go? No. I want to offer you a simple one-page suggestion as to how we have the opportunity to, I believe we have the opportunity to protect groundwater throughout the town, not just in 2 or 3 particular zones. And I thought about doing this for a long time. And, you know, again, I've been criticized for not bringing it forward. I'll also offer, or in my own defense, anyone who knows me knows that the last 14 months have been a horror for me. And the last thing that I needed to be doing is spending time more than I have. I attended more of the subcommittee's meetings, I think, than any other individual that wasn't part of the committee. What I'm submitting to you is what I thought about producing, and only today did I put it together. And I guess I'll apologize for that, but not so much. I'm glad to offer it as my thought as to how we can do things. And it simply states that North Smithfield is fortunate to have substantial surface and subsurface water resources. One surface water resource in the southern portion of the town is a primary drinking water source for the city of Woonsocket, and thereby a portion of North Smithfield. Other areas of the town are known to have subsurface groundwater resources that have been characterized as the largest in northern Rhode Island. Further, more than half of the town residents rely on groundwater for their individual consumption needs. Such being the case, it is hereby our intent as a community to optimize protection of those valuable resources by encouraging compliance with all relevant state and federal regulations, including but not limited to the following, all as amended: the Rhode Island Groundwater Quality Rules, the Rhode Island Freshwater Wetland Rules, the Rhode Island Stormwater Management Rules, the regulations for RIPDs, SARA Title III, Emergency Planning and Community Right to Know, Air Pollution Control Regulations, Oil Pollution Control Regulations, Rules and Regulations for Underground Storage Facilities. And there may be 1 or 2 others that could be added to this list, particularly as it relates to home heat storage. With specific regard to compliance for RIPD's requirements where required, a stormwater pollution prevention plan shall be filed with the town for all zoning or planning applications and within 60 days, any time thereafter, where updates to business operations or property improvements take place. With regard to Right to Know Act compliance, a list of hazardous materials and/or toxic substances shall be filed with the town for all zoning or planning applications, along with hazardous materials handling training programs for the employees of a proposed business. Each document shall thereafter be filed not less than annually or on any significant change in operations with the town fire department, which serves as the emergency planning district council. Operators of underground storage facilities storing motor fuels shall submit evidence of compliance with oil pollution control regulations annually to the town zoning official. Failure to maintain compliance with listed rules or failure to provide documentation as required may be cause for cancellation of locally issued licenses. You want to protect groundwater throughout the town? That's my recommendation. Thank you.
Anybody else like to get up? Anyone else want to speak?
Jason Jarvis, 140 Industrial Drive. I actually have 9 addresses on the industrial highway. I employ over 100 people in the town, so this directly affects what I've done in the past and what I continue to grow in this town. I've been fortunate enough to meet with Doug in the committee. Very impressed with their efforts, their passion to keep our water safe. I feel sometimes it's misdirected at the businesses. I think it has to, like what Gary just said, and I wish Gary had brought that, what I just heard him read, up sooner too. Because I don't think it's just the business owners that we have to be concerned with. Because I think I've proven to Doug in the committee that we are accountable once we open. But with talking to other business owners, I think the real important thing to think about when we pass something like this is who are we stopping coming into this town, or who are we making it so hard that they don't come into this town? That's very important to me, because at one time, I was a small businessman. In 1997, I bought a piece of land on the industrial highway. It was $109,000, and I thought, here I go, I'm going to change the world. And this many years later, I have 80 acres on that industrial highway and over 150,000 square feet under roof. So I didn't change the world, but I might have changed North Smithfield a little. I could tell you my tax bills would show that. But I think it's very important to allow that next businessman to come into this town, a young businessman that wants to be successful and build a real good business. And how do we know he's going to do that? We don't. And that's the problem with this. I've listened to the town solicitor tell us that it's very broad, it's very hard to enforce these special use permits. There's a lot of new plans coming in January, February in the state. It might take longer, and I understand that. And I understand we got to keep pushing forward to make this community better. The $5,000 grant, at the first meeting, I said I'd put that up so that this committee could do things right and not rush. There's no doubt we need a committee that wants to protect our water and educate our residents. Our commercial side of the business, I think we could help educate each other, but you're not going to come in and educate us because we're forced to get educated. And a lot of the things that we do, you have to understand. If we don't do it right, we don't get our next permits. We don't get to build our next buildings. Our insurance companies ask us for all of this information that you're saying you want before we're open. It's not going to happen. So when I look at this, first of all, I'm proud to be part of it, right? So it's a great town. It's a lot of people that care about it. Maybe different ideas, but no ideas are bad in the sense of what people are trying to get to. I would just like to table this for a couple more months when the state decides what is it that we're going to do with special use permits, because that's the real concern with the business owners, that we're going to have somebody, and we've talked about this. The town solicitor kind of mentioned it at one of the meetings, that if you allow this broad can, you cannot, and we could have a great committee right now that's very business friendly. But that doesn't mean that the next committee is going to be business friendly with us. The next administrator, the next council, the next planning board. So I think it's important that we set up rules and regulations that allow everyone to have the same ability to get to that finish line. We talk about soft costs. We have major projects going on in this town. We have a huge 9,000 square foot addition. We're going to be going for another 4,000 square foot addition on another building. We're redoing a whole building that was decrepit in the town that we just purchased that is, you know, a 50-year-old building, and it's going to have over 37 employees stay there instead of leave. And then we have another project in the town where we're getting rid of one of the largest eyesores in this town and no tax money for this town since 2017. So we have all these things going on, and it's so important that we have a planning board, a town council that supports us to bring in these great jobs, and we have to support this town. And how do we support the town? We cannot poison our water or do anything that we used to happen. It won't happen. We are regulated. We are checked. Checks and balances is what will save this town. Not stopping permits from people coming in to build in this town. So without taking a lot of time tonight, because I know everyone's tired, I am, I just want to thank Doug and his committee for all the hard work and everything they put in. And please consider, I love Gary's idea that everyone has the same rules and regulations. I think most of your problems when you talk about, it's a guy painting his car in his backyard. It's not me painting mine in my $800,000 booth. That's not the problem. So I just would like the council to really try to think about and consider postponing this till we find out what the state's going to do with these regulations, because they're changing, and you know, put our best foot forward as a community. And I think that's what the idea of the committee is. And I thank the committee. I just want to make sure that everyone knows that it was unbelievable meetings. You guys asked us to meet, and we met 2 or 3 times, and each time there was a new understanding between each side in what I go through to keep my permits and what they were trying to accomplish. So I don't want to demise what they're doing at all. I think it's an unbelievable act, and it's something that education-wise the whole town needs. But I like the business community to be part of that success. And hopefully we can all work together in the future to keep our water clean and fresh. Thank you.
Anybody else like to get up?
Good evening. Gail Browlinghoff, 21 Bruce Drive. I'd like to see a man proud of the place in which he lives. I'd like to see a man live so that his place will be proud of him, Abraham Lincoln. I love that saying because we can actually work together, the Water Commission and the business communities. I really want this to work out, and I think we can. A lot of the things I think that we did write up were a little bit confusing. And I know a lot of things that Gary says, I just don't understand, I'm sorry. He's talking and it's going way over my head, and sometimes I wish we had a 4th grade manual to say, what we have is an aquifer. But we have these rules that were, I guess, in place in 2006. I wasn't here during Dowling Village, so I don't know what happened. All I know is that I was asked to volunteer to go over some ordinances, which is fine with me. I would love, wetlands is my thing. I'm not here to do anything. This is all business related. A lot of the suggestions that Mr. Ozowski has talked about, we didn't put. So it was in the 2006 ordinance. I wish we could have had more time with him only because of his experience, but I do appreciate what he's been through. And I'm not going to insult Mr. Ozowski. He has all the expertise in that area. But I would have liked to ask him a lot more questions about high-capacity wells and where are we going with that And where is this well that we could possibly get more water from for the town? It was never mentioned in any one of the meetings, so that would have been great. To me, that's awesome. So I'm going to go through a couple of these things. Unfortunately, I wasn't at the last planning board meeting, and our last water commission meeting, I tore my ligament in my knee playing with a German Shepherd puppy. So when you're older, don't get a puppy. I'd like to go over a couple of things in the ordinance, and I'm not going to take a lot of time. In number 25, the regulations herein govern the development and use of lands within the Water Supply Protection District aquifers, and shall take precedence over any conflicting laws, ordinances, or codes, and are established for the following purposes. The only one that we added was in line 46. If any of the other ones were not good enough, then we should have taken them out in 2007, 2008, 2009, 2010. Well, what happened in 2020? Well, the planning board, I guess, didn't go through every single line by line by line in this ordinance. As you can see, there's over 500 line items. Our zoning ordinance is 336 pages long. I don't know if any of you have read it. I have several times. I want to see more businesses in town. I want to see them in an area where they're not going to have high-capacity wells and maybe draw in some of the contaminants that are around. I'm very skeptical about Tiff Road because it's really close to a Superfund site, but that's not here or there. But what I'd like to see is what Abraham Lincoln said. I'm very proud to be in North Smithfield. I want the businesses to be proud that they're in North Smithfield. And I think this is something that we can work together with. Thank you.
Gail, may I ask you a question before you go down?
Yeah.
When you said that you wish you had more time, you wish you heard more from Gary, you wish.
Yes.
Doesn't that show then that this ordinance is not ready yet, that you're not ready to put this forward, that we're not ready to vote on this? If you're saying you wish you had more time, you can have more time. There's no need to wish it. It can happen. And Gary, I'm sure, would be willing to sit and talk to everybody and tell you everything he knows about water. So the fact that you're wishing you had more time kind of tells me that maybe we're not ready for this.
Well, I wish I had more time with Gary. I mean, after all the meetings and constant meetings that we had, you know, to actually ask a volunteer of their time to go week by week by week by week, and then be told that everything that you've done, we're not even going to consider. We're just going to table it for another 2-3 months, but to see what happens in 2024. Well, what happens in 2024 is for special use permits. Is what's happening in 2024 actually going to affect our water supply overlay district? I don't think so. It's our land use that's going to govern what is going to be allowed in any district. So it has nothing to do with this ordinance. It has to do with land use. So I want you to really be, you know, logic of that is that we're not making the land use up. It's already been in town.
And to piggyback off that, because Madam President, if I may, sorry, it's my mic. 2024, you know, I know that has come up. You know, it's only a couple weeks away, but keep in mind that land use is really what is at the heart of all of this. In 2024, the special use is essentially, the state is going to force a town to say yes or no. And I am pretty confident, just looking at in a majority of our ordinances, that we are behind the 8 ball, and we are going to be in for some trouble starting January 1 if we don't start updating and approving ordinances. Now, I know the planner, according to the administrator, is in the process of potentially getting a grant to help with that process, and that would be fantastic. But some communities have already adopted new ordinances in advance. So, yeah, we can slow down, But I believe, Mr. Solicitor, that if we don't start coming up with some objective criteria around special use outside of this, it's a straight go. There is no special use anymore. It's a yes. So the intent here is that the special use aligned with the yes criteria of the ordinance. And that's why the two look very similar. And I don't disagree with some of the language that Gary has proposed. The intent of the ordinance, I just really want to clarify, is that it is nowhere in there does it say that the town is making the determination or advising DEM. I just want that to be very clear. It is essentially following the model of the planning board and the planner and zoning that says, if DEM says you got a green light to go, you have a green light to go. That's all it's asking. And some of the criteria in this ordinance, I agree it is a little lengthy, but it's cleared out there because I'm sure 100% of the time we don't get a perfect application. And I'm sure that the state misses things, and that's why the state allows the town to have a little bit of oversight on their process. And so I would caution that we look at 2024, we start looking at the things we can control now. And if we need to amend the special use criteria tonight to make it clearer, I don't have any problem with that. I've said this is a fluid document all along. It should be, especially something like this where things change with contamination and contaminants of concern and those types of things. I mean, the state just updated 250 RICR3 just the other couple weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
They had a public comment on it. It went through their PFAS changes just as the state got directed from EPA. So, but it really is a land use issue. And what is allowed on industrial, regardless of the ordinance, that is, I think, where most of the conversation probably should also be focused on at some point. To make sure that we have the right land uses, that it is clear for a new business. Are those, North Kingstown just updated theirs because they found out that like X-ray technicians, they could start to do business in there because of the new the new technology. But some businesses that they didn't see 20 years ago are actually causing harm. So does it make sense for it to be in that area? So we should be having those conversations, but I don't want us to stop blurring the lines of delaying because I think it will cause an impact down the line at some point. But I just wanted to put that out there. That's all.
Thank you. Anyone else?
This is brief. Lee Angelette, 49 Orchard Street, speaking as a member of the Water Overlay Committee. Our committee has been meeting for almost a year, as you know. We have spoken to a number of experts from the DEM, the EPA, Department of Health, and more. Their recommendations are simple. Change the map back to how it was without any exemptions and support the language changes that we have submitted to all of you for approval tonight. We are not opposed to a business expansion as long as it's done responsibly. The only way an expansion will be sustainable and therefore survive in the future is to be done responsibly. This ordinance will ensure that all future development will be done responsibly, protecting our #1 resource, our water. We need this language and ordinance in order for a town to be able to have control about what does and does not get built. To be clear, as Doug just stated, as Gail stated, the land use chart determines what businesses can or cannot be built, not this map, not these language changes. You have heard the area of Industrial Drive will never be drinkable. The DEM is the only authority to make that change. Nobody here has the authority or the ability to do so. The Hudson River wasn't able to be used for fishing or drinking 80 or 100 years ago. The Hudson River now is more sustainable. In the 80s, the Baltic Sea was one of the most polluted oceans in our world because of contaminations. It was dead. A collaborative effort has brought that sea back to life. Fishermen are fishing again. They swim in it, and they're able to drink the water with treatment. They said the same about the Blackstone. We have a duty and an obligation to bring the water classification back to what it is classified as through the DEM, which is GAA, the best, highest quality water that there is. It may take 100 years or more, but it is the responsibility of this town to bring it back. Our goal is to, as a committee, is to protect water for all residents. We are proud to have secured a grant. Although it took us 4 months, not hours, we still did attain a grant. And please make a note to the minutes and an adjustment. It was not for $5,000. It was just under $2,500, just to be clear. We plan to use this grant money to educate our residents, and we even have some businesses who have said that they would be happy to help us in funding and work with us. And I look forward to hopefully being able to work with the businesses to further educate our entire community. With that being said, in closing, I'm just asking for your support in voting for these changes. Thank you.
And there it is again. You know, it sounds like what I'm trying to advocate for is that we let people come in and just waste away areas of the town. That's not what I'm saying, folks. The DEM and EPA behind them will insist that water that exceeds EPA standards as allowed to be managed by Rhode Island DEM will get cleaned. Let's not get confused. This isn't about whether or not the groundwater gets cleaned from the stamina release or the Amprex release. That's not it. The issue is you don't put high-capacity community wells in an area where there's industrial risk. Even if those chlorinateds were, somebody walked in here tomorrow and said, they're gone. You don't want to put a community well in an industrial area. It does not make sense. Yes, you know, frankly, I've cleaned sites. I mean, there's a site on 146 that we all know that was a reason for a lot of things to get stopped out there. I brought it back to a GA standard, as was required. Has anything happened along that stretch of land? No. No. Why? Because of the risk. That's the point. And we're looking at elevating the standard in that industrial zone that, as I may have said in another meeting, I feel was the reason that we could afford to build the Hallowell School and the high school back in the 50s and the 60s because of the increased tax base that it brought in. You know, it's about balance and it's about managing risk. It's not just about what the groundwater quality is today and you know, the grand idea and ideal that every drop is drinkable. That's great to hang on to, and I will sign on to it anywhere you want to. But if you ask me where we're going to put a high-capacity well in this town, it's not going to be in your industrial park, folks. There are other areas. We've talked about that. I won't say where they are because the town paid a lot of money to look for those spots, and there are reports that exist in town files to explain where those future resources are. They're not in your industrial park. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Carol Drainville, 750 Pound Hill Road. I'm also on the Water Resource Board. I'm not an engineer. I'm an elementary school teacher, so I tend to bring things down to basics. And what I haven't heard tonight anywhere is the fact that there are private drinking water wells on the same part of the aquifer that where the industrial highway is. So part of the concern and why the changes, the concern about the changes that were made in 2020 is, what about the families who have private drinking water wells in the area that has been exempt from protection? So consequently, those were some of the things that we were talking about and we were concerned about. And the town definitely needs business, of course, but it's a community. And part of the community are the residents. And so the concern that you have to have here is, are the people of the town as protected as they should be. And that's why when we were meeting, that was one of the concerns we had, was with the changes, which would help business, are they also going to protect the people? And if a home is contaminated, that means that family loses, obviously, their health, their welfare, and the equity in their home. So I wish I had heard more tonight about the balance between business and community, and I didn't. Thank you.
Anybody else? Anyone else want to speak? One last time? Want to close the public hearing?
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Biragad.
Yes.
Ms. Hamilton.
Yes.
Mrs. O'Hara.
Yes.
Mr. Ogier.
Yes.
Ms. Alves.
Yes. Yeah, make a motion for,
Yeah, unless there's any discussion by the council.
is there any discussion, any further discussion?
Yeah, just briefly. Was it Mrs. Drainville, is that, she had mentioned that, and she's right, but there's not enough talk about residential, right? And there's no question that's more important than anything. But if you read what Gary presented to us, that covers residential. I think the smart thing to do would be to go back to the drawing board and at least look at what Gary, the ordinance that Gary, at least work it into your ordinance in some way. But this is really good right here, and it's brief, it's to the point, and it includes not only businesses, but it includes residential as well. Because like what was pointed out, residents can pollute water just as much as businesses can. So this is something worth looking into. It's something worth holding on this vote for. Maybe adding it into your ordinance, or just using it all together. But it definitely makes it worth, it's definitely worth looking into. And secondly, I did a little research briefly on the internet. It's very, very easy to go to find out this information. Rhode Island is one of the lowest, one of the worst ranked states for doing business. Rhode Island as a whole. If this goes through, I'm afraid that North Smithfield will be one of the worst towns in one of the worst states to do business in. How are we going to get people? You might get someone like Jay, who is already doing business here, to expand. You might get someone who lives in town that wants to remain in town to do business in town. But how are you going to get someone to pick North Smithfield over Uxbridge or one of the other towns along 146? I think it's worth pausing this thing, looking at what Gary has to say, and I would recommend that we table this until further review.
The only thing I have in response to that, and not just to that, but to other things that I've heard is, first of all, I wasn't here in 2006. My only affiliation with the town in 2006 was I was in high school, and my sister played field hockey at the Widewater Sports. I know, I look young, right? But and I came to this town all the time, and I thought, wow. Well, by the industrial park, and I thought, wow, what a great place to grow up one day and live. So that's how I knew I wanted to be in North Smithfield at that point, before I was even thinking about where I wanted to live. And so these changes and these proposals and the effort that I've put into this along with the other group is because we value, and I'm not discrediting the comments that I've heard, so please don't take it like that, but we value what we hope of protections for the town. And so Eddie Dowling and all that, yeah, I don't disagree. I think Eddie Dowling probably could have been designed a little bit better, like more like a Garden City or something like that, right? Instead of what it is now. And it's great, but there's potential that could have probably been there. And the phrasing that's been used of, well, this committee's anti-business, a lot of the language that's been referenced either tonight or in the recent meetings, that's a lot of the language that has been coming out of the group. You know, it should be a partnership between the business community and the town. You know, there should be a relationship there so that we can not only educate the community, you know, how do we look at our land use decisions? You know, what kind of requirements are they going over? How do they help educate us in the process? One, it repairs trust with the community because let's face it, this town has a terrible history with water quality and a lack of trust when it comes to that, good, bad, or indifference. A lot of the language that's in Gary's requirements, the 250 RICR 150.053, the 250 RICR 153, you know, the stormwater management rules and guidance, that one isn't directly listed, but it is inferred to. You know, the emergency planning, the air pollution, the oil pollution, a lot of those things are already referenced inside of the ordinance, and that's why I said if we just need to point to those to make it cleaner, I have no problem just simplifying the language in that regard. But no one has actually specified how this is going to make it more difficult to do business in North Smithfield. Everyone is talking about all the time that it's going to add. It actually improves time. Jay's business would have actually had to have skipped going to zoning in his expansion that he recently was doing. He would have actually benefited from the changes here. So I don't mean to put him on the spot, but you know, I'm just trying to give the council relevant information. You know, starting in 24, we'll go down that path again. They're going to skip an element of planning. You're going to have all state and federal permits before the town can even go into a preliminary plan. So it is going to get a lot tougher to do business, not from the town's perspective and from the state. And if that is the concern, you need to call your local representatives and have them advocate to fix that requirement because the state is the one that's going further backwards. The town is trying to look at, and the ordinance here is trying to say, what does DEM require? Because we don't have the engineering services in-house. We don't have the staff in-house to handle this because it would take not just one person, a team of people to oversee this. And the fire department is great and all, but you know, they probably need additional resources to help carry this out as well if this was the case. So we have enforcement issues that we need to look at. But no one has actually given me concrete evidence as to how this is going to hinder business, what type of businesses it's going to hinder, and again, the time that it's going to take. The town, in some instances, is probably ready to grant permits, but the state is the one that's holding the town up. But no one talks about that. It's just this ordinance is the reason why, and this ordinance is actually getting easier and more simplified and fixing the problems from the past. It's a lot of language changes, it's a lot of revisions to match state laws, but I just wanted to put that all out there that it actually speeds up the timeline. It's more in line with the current requirements from the state that are coming down the channel. But you know, I leave it up to the council to do what they think is best. But at the end of the day, it's still a land use issue. Everyone wants to get caught up on the special use. But if you're a yes in this zone, there is no special use criteria. There's no real change. A lot of this ordinance is to protect groundwater and notification of changes to Woonsocket, to Uxbridge, to Lincoln, to Millville. I think we just saw, we just had to have a meeting, or the town had to have a meeting with Woonsocket about the pipeline extension from the Phillips thing. Probably should have notified them per the ordinance. So, I mean, but maybe we should just get rid of all that. Maybe the town doesn't need it, I guess. But I don't think that's the direction we should be going. I think it's common sense stuff in here. If we need to point the language to make it clearer, to point to these statutes, active and as amended, I don't think the committee would go against that, but I just think delaying is not the course of action here. It's a land use issue, and if we have concerns over land use in the industrial park, then we should be taking those up and looking at what modifications do we need to make there. But there's not a lot of special uses in the industrial park. It's a lot of yes and no's. So I'll just throw that in.
May I? So if you were going to look at revisions of any type in language for clarity, would this delay a vote tonight, or would you, how would you handle that?
So I'll defer to David on this matter.
I really think at this point you have two choices. Either you have to meticulously go over every change and take a vote, or you need to generate a clean copy and then review every change of that clean copy. It's one of, you can't, there's no way to just lump it all in. You have to either meticulously go through every change and take a vote, so the clerk has it and the public know about it, and it's very clear, or you need to generate a clean copy to vote on and explain where those changes are.
So what is your requirement? What's your recommendation, David?
I would suggest get a clean copy,
Okay.
and that would even give you the chance
So if
to,
I'm gonna delay this, then I want Woonsocket to weigh in on it. I'm gonna follow the ordinance. And any other town that's identified that we should be notifying. Just putting it out there.
well, I'm just.
No, I know, it's not, I'm just saying, you know, it talks about, even in Gary's proposal, drinking water source from Woonsocket. Our ordinances talks about protecting the water supply of the town and of Woonsocket. This is an aquifer. It may not be a high-capacity well, but it is an aquifer, which is why this zone was originally created. And so I just think that out of an abundance of caution, because I know Woonsocket wasn't, I guess, notified, isn't always notified in the past, we should just do the right thing and send them the memo and see what they say. And in the meantime, if there's a special use criteria, I guess we'll be addressing the special use changes in
the same
January.
time.
Then I'd like a motion to be made that we clarify this copy, make the invitations for Woonsocket, table at that time where they can hop in on it. It should be clarified.
Is that a motion, Claire?
That's a motion.
So I want clarity on the motion. I just want clarity, Claire, that's all.
Okay.
No, I just want to make sure I heard it correctly. that's
Oh,
all.
I'm sorry. Hey, you know,
You're
the
good.
age is
Yeah,
there.
no, you're good.
I would like the copy clarified, made whole that way, and for us to invite, as you would like to have Woonsocket in on this. Am I right?
I just think we should just send it over and have them write a response.
Okay, then send it over, make them aware.
I mean, if we're gonna do this, we might as well just. And maybe send a copy to DEM as well. Have them weigh in on it.
If you're going to do that, again, I would recommend that you continue both the ordinance.
Yeah, I'm gonna
map,
make a revision
and
on
the-
my, I'm gonna
and-
rescind.
And the
Public
public hearing to a date certain, so that if you're gonna get comments, you have to have the public hearing to introduce them before you can then act on them. But I would suggest, just so we're separating the wheat from the chaff here, I was saying, if you were gonna act on this ordinance as, with the changes you wanted, you either have to meticulously go through those changes again, vote by vote, or make a clean copy.
What's the cleaner process? That's what I
Well, I
want to
mean,
know.
I think the cleaner process is to have a clean copy.
Okay, so then, yeah, we'll just delay
So,
it.
and then if you want to do that, then I would suggest that you continue the public hearing as well as the ordinance and the map to a date certain. Otherwise, you've got all the advertisement situation.
I know.
And if we want to avoid having to re-advertise.
That wasn't cheap.
So, and I assume you're just suggesting that copies of this will go to the surrounding communities for comment.
Yeah, I just wanted to have, just comment. Just they can issue a memo on it if they so choose. Give them like 2 weeks, or give them a week
And
or
then give
something.
them the notice of the date certain, any comments by whatever date that is.
Yeah, because this will further delay, right? So I was ready to take a vote.
Me too.
I'll be very honest with you, because I think it's in the best interest of the town. So,
Another 2 weeks to clarify this. I think that.
well, I don't know if it's clarification as much as, I mean, we could do clarification in terms of looking at each revision right now and voting on each one, and that would suffice. So that's possible as well.
I'm just unsure, like, what is why do you want to send something to Woonsocket? Nothing against Woonsocket, but what do we care what is their opinion important in this matter?
I mean, they're a surrounding community, right? This impacts them to an extent. I mean, everyone thinks that, you know, why not just get another opinion? But I'm just saying it talks about that we notify when there's issues or changes to groundwater and the like as it relates to this zone. So if everybody is, I guess, so hesitant to adopt, then at this point, might as well just expand out and see what the surrounding communities say if the changes impact them in a negative way. Since that's all we've been hearing is the negative impacts.
You still lost me, though. I don't understand why.
Because in
why we
2020,
care- Nothing against
Yeah, yeah,
Woonsocket. I
no.
grew up there, but why do we care what
but
Woonsocket thinks about
I think in
the water
2020,
ordinance?
Woonsocket had to weigh in. And they didn't until like the last minute they were notified, if I remember correctly. So that's why I'm saying out of an abundance of caution now, if we're gonna slow this down, just might as well at least just cover Woonsocket.
Just if I may say, Woonsocket, we have sewers on that street.
You can't,
Woonsocket-
it's not open, it's not open.
Sorry.
So do we want to clarify the motion, what is actually,
There's a lot of directions, so I don't want to weigh in. You should just be clear. I'm just concerned about the public hearing and a date certain if you're going that way. If you're not going that way, then the council just has to be very clear on what they're doing.
So we have approximately how many changes?
So I can read the changes if
And-
the council so chooses, but if we were gonna delay it, my point is that I just, at that point, I think if we're not, I don't know what I'm just trying to think, so give me a second. I have some changes, the changes I read earlier, the changes I can reread again, and we can do it like the budget, and we could vote up and down on each one.
Councilman, if you're going to go over the changes, can you go over the one that everybody has and where they are?
because I don't think we have that.
So then,
Because-
let's just, I guess we'll delay it to the next meeting then,
Okay,
if that's what you're advising.
okay, that's fine. I
So we
get
all
them.
have-
All right, so if we have a clean copy at the next meeting, we can look at each one of them, vote on each one,
Well, no,
and
'cause
then-
we'll have the clean copy.
and that,
You won't need to, you just adopt it
won't
as
need to,
is.
'cause
You
we'll
can
have the
adopt it
clean
as a
copy.
substitute.
right, okay,
And the only reason we have to keep the public hearing open is because we have the changes?
Yeah.
That's right, to introduce it.
to reintroduce the information, okay.
Since we're delaying, can I ask a question? If you can go to line 397. And that talks about how the applicant shall include an analysis, licensed professional geologist, all that stuff. And so that's what we talked about. That's going to be at the applicant's expense, correct? Is it, since we have time to look into that, is that legal? Is that illegal? Like,
It is legal.
it's perfectly legal? You have no problem with that?
So, is it, do we need to get an official, I know it's
Look, We
legal.
can confirm that. We can confirm
Could we
it.
get a written opinion on that?
I mean, if we're gonna go
guess,
that
if
route,
you
we
want.
might as well just get it.
I didn't work on this ordinance, so I can't give you an opinion on it, but if you want, that's gonna take another whole step in the process.
I mean, if that's the case, if that's the route you want to go down, John, we should just get a written opinion on the whole thing then. Because in the stormwater checklist that is mentioned in Gary's criteria, it says indicate as follows, where the pertinent calculations and the information for the items above are provided. Existing conditions analysis for each subshed, including curve numbers. It talks about all of these things that are in the ordinance. So that's where the group was kind of felt it didn't need to change any of the language. It just felt like it was sufficient enough and that it was allowed. But I mean, if we think that we need a legal opinion, because I know there's been questions that have come up in the past, which I don't think are legal issues. I would hope that, David has glanced at it a few times. I hope that if there was, he would have said, hey,
Well, I
we need to
guess
look at
there's
this,
also,
but if not, then
there's also a distinction between existing language and new language, and now
that's existing.
that's an existing language, and we're having a discussion about existing language.
A lot of the language discussions that we've had are existing language discussions.
Oh, is that right?
So, not so much on the stuff that was changed.
Whatever the council wants to do, we'll get it done. I don't know what else to tell you. This was not a project that I was working on, but I will happy to work on it.
I'm confused as to where we are right now.
So,
There's a lot going on.
yeah, are we making a motion to get a clean copy and then come back and then vote on it then? That's, I think, the last motion that's been up.
Yes.
And
I think
then
it's a
you also
motion to
added that
continue,
you wanted
right.
to
That
see
means
the
you would
surrounding
continue the
communities.
hearing and the ordinance and the map to another date certain.
So that date certain is going to be the next council meeting, and I want David to at least review it, at least preliminary. It doesn't need to be a written, but if something glaring stares out, I want that on the record.
Yeah, and I think, if I may, for the record, I think we're looking for things to prevent this from happening.
Yeah, it's ultimately what this is.
So what I'd like to do is be on the record and say that I'm in support of it. I've read it. I know the committee has done a tremendous job. I believe in my heart it's for the greater good, for the residents and the businesses in town. I know we can work together. If we have to revise it later, we will. 2024 coming with the special use, you know what? We'll deal with that when we get there, but we can't be inactive. It's our responsibility, so we have to do this. Next meeting.
Right, but I'm not looking for reasons to make this not happen. I'm bringing, actually, this is something that came up that Mr. Najarian brought up at the very first public hearing, when he questioned whether or not that was a legal thing to actually require, and he said he's never seen, as chairman of the zoning committee, he's never even seen that done before. So this was brought up at the first reading. It's not something that I just brought up now about the legality of it. And the only reason why it came up is because I went back and I reviewed the video of that first meeting this afternoon, and I just wanted to confirm that one of his concerns were the legality of that. So I'm asking the question.
Yeah, and we did address all of his concerns. So that's why the language, if it's partially in the zone, it is all in. That was one of his
Right,
concerns.
so I
and
noticed that. I
we
did
took
notice
that
that.
recommendation,
Yeah.
and my belief is that if the groundwater changes below it and you can change the land use, you change the land use, as in, working with DEM. So, but I don't have a problem continuing it. I'll submit the clean copy tomorrow to Joanne so she can distribute to the council in advance. Put it on the town website, put it in the newsletter. If it needs to be as publicly available to avoid confusion, and just go from there.
And I would just suggest that both the clean copy, it shows all these changes you made, but then a completely clean copy.
So like take the track changes off?
Right, I would do both. So we'll know exactly, that way you could vote on that clean copy with all the track changes removed, and that'll be the new law.
So that'll be our next meeting.
Right. Does that make sense?
Yeah, makes sense.
Okay, you have a
So do you
motion?
need to rescind your?
So, yeah, so then I will, so wait, we have a motion open, right? So,
We
Well, I
do.
think,
Can I make a
has there been a motion in a second?
No second.
Okay.
No second? I'll second.
no, I think we gotta
I made the
kill the
motion.
first motion,
Oh, you gotta kill
rescind
the
it.
first one.
And then we have to,
So you-
I have to rescind mine to reopen the public
The,
hearing.
public hearing.
Who made the first motion? Did I
You
make?
did.
I made the first.
It's been a
Okay.
while. A lot of discussion.
That's right, I was waiting for
Yeah,
it.
'cause you were still discussing it. Okay.
And
I suggest that you withdraw that motion, reopen the public hearing.
That's what I was going to do.
Then make the motion to, as the councilwoman wanted, to continue the matter to a date certain for the map, the ordinance, and the public
It's our next
hearing.
meeting.
20?
So you withdraw your motion, please.
I withdraw my motion and reiterate that.
So then, I made the motion. So I have to make a motion to rescind my motion to close the public hearing and to reopen the public hearing and continue to a date
12/18.
certain of 12/18.
Well, do one thing at a time. Just make a motion to
Oh.
withdraw,
So we-
reopen the public hearing.
So I'll make a motion to reopen the public hearing.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Biragad.
Yes.
Ms. Hamilton.
Yes.
Mrs. O'Hara.
Yes.
Mr. Ogier.
Yes.
Ms. Alves.
Yes.
And now all three matters are before the council again. The public hearing, the reading, approval of ordinance and map, just as it's there.
So then I'll make a motion to continue the public hearing, including second reading and approval of ordinance and map. This is ordinance 6.19 Water Supply Protection Overlay District, and proposed changes to next council meeting, 6/18, as the date certain.
12/18.
12/18, sorry. Jumping ahead.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Biragad.
Yes.
Ms. Hamilton.
Yes.
Mrs. O'Hara.
Yes.
Mr. Ogier.
Yes.
Ms. Alves.
Yes. All right, next item, discussion by council vote or other action on status/progress report of specific item. The first one is a 3 to 5 year forecast.
Sorry. I was supposed to meet with Mark today to go over that. Both of us kept on getting conflicted with trying to
I'm
go
sorry?
over it.
Can you say that?
Mark and I were supposed to go over the 3 to 5 year. That's one of the two parties I wanted to go over it with. but him and I kept on having conflicting, when he wasn't busy, I was, and vice versa. So hopefully sometime this week, we can find a time to go over that, and then I'll have it reviewed by somebody else as well.
So when are we going to get this to actually see?
Yeah, do you need help from anyone else? Can we?
I have, I mean, the council could have outsourced with somebody else instead of just one person. That would have been great, but I've completed it to this point.
But you're the finance director, so we need you to do that.
And the
right?
last one that was made by how many people?
So can we get a draft for 12/18?
Right. So I'm doing my best to complete it. I will have it done. It is complete. I just need it reviewed by more than just myself, because the last one was reviewed by 5 people. So I want to make sure that before it gets presented to the public, it's correct, or as correct as it can be.
Yeah, I just want to make a correction. I don't think that that's the only time we had a 3 to 5 year forecast. I think we had them all the time. That one that was done was exceptionally detailed by the budget committee for a particular time, but that isn't something that we normally get.
What other ones were provided?
I
I've
saw one
always had
online.
them.
It was at the state.
Yeah, those are all, you grab a 3% and you click and drag. That's what those were.
No, I'm talking about the availability with finance directors to provide a 3 to 5 year forecast, you know?
Yeah,
I mean, that's just the way it is. That's part of the
Yeah,
requirements. when you're-
I just would like to see those other ones, because if a finance director was doing that, that'd be great to see, because that'd be great homework for myself, and to provide into implementation into one that I'm creating now.
So
I know Cynthia, the prior finance director, said she'd be happy to talk to you about it. 'Cause
Yeah.
She produced one, so.
She produced them to me.
Okay,
In my
so-
position, and those were, it was just a simple 3% click and drag.
Okay, well. all
But
right,
again, I can reach out to her and just to make sure that that's the case.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, I was only there for a few years. Some of those years, again, this was my municipality. But, yeah, I mean, I'd love to see other data to compare it to what I have now, to see how, I can tell you the 3 to 5 year forecast that was provided to the state compared to what I've made is night and day. Completely night and day. Mine is infinitesimally more detailed. So that's why, before it gets to the public's eye, I want to make sure it's right, or as right as we can make it.
do we have a target date?
Definitely before the end of the year. I mean, once I get Mark and I to look at it, then I'm going to send it to another party, have them view it. Obviously, this is no cost to the town.
Right.
They're going to look at it. We're going to have a couple meetings, make sure it's correct, and then I'll have it for the next, hopefully for the next meeting.
Awesome. Thanks, Tony.
All right, thank you. Some of these we've already talked about, but facility manager,
Still trying to coordinate time. I know the holidays and stuff, so more to come.
grants?
Nothing new to add since the last meeting.
Do we not have the spreadsheet? No.
No, you do not. There was nothing new since the last handout that you received.
Could we just get that every time, even though?
Sure. Basically, yeah, sure.
Thank you. Human resource position, we already talked about that. That's just in the works. Town website,
It's moving along. I think there hasn't been a lot of changes since the last meeting where I talked about it. There's some discussion around, there may be a little bit of a credit on the project, so, which would be a good thing. But there's more to come. I think the phases, we have another meeting in December, and then we're going to be getting into some testing, and I know there's some training scheduled for January, and I think the targeted rollout date is still 2024 February, fingers crossed. So there'll be more to come, especially as we get closer to go live.
right? How is it going, though? Like, is it looking?
So we did all of, like, we had to submit pictures and content and, the color schemes and, pick the buttons and those types of things. So they're in the process of designing the new version. And then once we see what that actually looks like, I think in December, it's coming up soon. Actually, it is already early December. That's when there'll be some of the feedback from, I figure the council will get to weigh in on it and, we can kind of
Right.
show it off and stuff. So yeah, it's coming.
Right. Next one is Hollowell Review Committee, payment of invoice 26512 to Bragman, Hendry, and Archetype, Inc., Mr. Porter.
So Jeff is not here this evening. He asked that I speak on his behalf as the liaison. And before you tonight is an invoice totaling $10,500. It was approved at the last Hollowell Review Committee meeting. And if there is any questions, please, you can feel free to reach out. This is all for engineering work.
I have a question. I would like to go on the record yet again to ask BH&A to provide us with a $4 million, either a cost estimate or some very simplistic architectural drawing so that we can determine what we're doing with the $4 million that we have already received and we have not even begun to get that grant in motion because we have to provide the grantor with a location and a budget. And we have neither. So I know in the past, and you're the messenger, so sorry about that, that there was a $193,000 additional cost that was requested of BH&A for that service. And I would like to have them come to a meeting and explain to us why within the confines of the $120,000 they can't provide that to us.
So the Hallowell Review Committee is having a meeting this Wednesday night. I believe BH&A will be there, just to put it out there. They've been very active in the process. I know we're trying to schedule a public hearing for the 18th of January, a joint meeting to show off the master plan. So stay on the lookout for that. The $120,000, I think, I just want to be on the record. You can't cross the two projects. One is the master plan, one is the grant. You're absolutely correct, Paulette. We need to finalize the location, we need to come up with a budget, and then you need to execute that grant in order to get reimbursed on the soft costs, regardless of where you put it. You could put it in a location C. And otherwise, if we start doing all the studies and all the engineering and all the analysis behind it, we won't get reimbursed unless we execute the grant.
Well, within the confines of their contract, their current contract, I would like them to be able to tell us why they can't, if they could do a $14.7 million one, why that can't be pared back to $4 million within the confines of the current contract without going out for an additional 193. But I'll ask them.
Yeah,
I'll ask them.
please. Yeah, it's a separate project, and
Yeah.
I think that's what they're going to say. It wasn't in the scope of the contract.
Well,
and so, because the
but-
grant wasn't really wasn't a thing at the time when we started doing the master
we're
plan.
looking at a building that we didn't even think we would have for 14.7 is what they came up with right now, or some such number in that vicinity, and we can't afford that.
Right.
So we need to find out what we could get for 4, and I don't understand why that can't be pared down within the same contract.
And I don't want to get too far off topic, but I'm going to say the same thing I told Hallowell. Let's not get bogged down on the cost, because this isn't a police station.
No,
There is
I know.
so many more creative funding mechanisms. There's philanthropic work. There's donating a wing. There's grants. There's YMCA. There's Boys and Girls Club. There's all these other pathways to funding. CVS could donate part of the money on a matching grant, and that's where the master plan comes in play. So I don't disagree. We can't afford face value 14.7, but we can definitely ask the question to BH&A and see if they can modify the scope of their contract. But I guess Jeff can provide an update hopefully at the next meeting.
Okay.
And please come on Wednesday.
I agree with Paul at 100%. I think that building that we saw, a football field, all the stuff, forget that, and just
God.
tell us what you can do for $4 million, right? Tell us where can we go for $4 million? We have $4 million. Show us how that building fits on that site.
Paulette, you're exactly right. I went into one of those meetings, I was looking to see if Linda was here, and everyone was saying this, Scholars Hall, or what we can do there, this way, we'll preserve that, Hallowell's better, and I can't remember the man's name. He's sitting in a corner, and he says, Why don't we just say, what can you do for 4 million?
Exactly.
That's it. Instead of 104 million.
And part of the reason for that, Doug, is Kim has something on the agenda tonight, which is very important, that if it doesn't work out, we got to be ready to pivot and go right back to Scouters. So let's do this, and let's find out if it's worth it. If it's not going to work, let's move. We'll pivot and go right back to Scouters.
I just think we need to make a decision regardless. I know there's frustration at Hallowell committee level in terms of what are we doing with the $4 million grant? I'm sure it sounds like there's frustration at the multi-generational committee group. So I think we need to pick a course of action and then stick with it. Because we voted to say, let's go Hallowell, and then I think Mark was going to work with BHNA to, well, hopefully they would provide a budget that then we could use to execute. But if we're going to go back to Scouters, I think we need to just say, okay, this is the reasons why we're picking a course, and then just leave it.
Right.
Instead of going back and forth, because once we execute that grant, I think it's going to be a challenge to start moving things around.
Yeah, but I think getting that whole rendering from BHNA with the Hallowell Review Committee, seeing the opportunity of bringing the multi-generational there, kind of like, brought this huge program where we know we just have $4 million, right? And
Wasn't
so
it
to see,
114 million or something?
So
You mentioned.
So to see this huge program that they're showing us, and really, we just have the 4 million, we're talking about two different things, but I think that was like the opportunity almost for the Hallowell Review, saying, okay, now we're gonna have that down here, but we don't have that kind of, those kind of funds that they're looking at. I mean, the whole project was what, like 35 million or something like that?
Yeah, like over 10 years or something.
Yeah, 40-something million. So, but it's like, we're just looking for the 4 million, and I think we were hoping that that was gonna be at least one building that we could start with and then go on from there, but that didn't happen.
I think that's because we never told them. Ultimately, it's on the council. We never told them. We said, go do the master plan and run fast and furious with the master plan. And now we're like, let's add in the $4 million grant. And that's a whole separate project with a whole separate scope, a whole separate contract amendments. Because 4 million is not going to get you a lot. A lot of that 14 million was a lot of requests that ended up coming out of the multi-generational committee for the senior center. So, I mean, we have to make tough decisions at some point, but the grant was originally intended for Scouters. And so if we're moving it, we need to be realistic that $4 million may only get you a portion of that building, but you would get new, and there would be potentially benefits. So I think either way, I'm going to say we need to pick a spot and then just go forward.
Well,
2030 won't be here before you know it.
I think we need to see if BHNA will even show us what they can do for 4 million, but if they're gonna say that's a whole nother separate contract, then we're just throwing money away, and we should just kind of see what we can do where we originally were going, but anyway.
I think that's what they're discussing now. And some good points were brought up, that Scout's Wall needs work. Get two things all done at once, and we're not going to lose another building. That's what was spoken about. It seemed to be very practical.
Does anyone want to make a motion to authorize payment for invoice 26512 for BHNA?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Biragad.
Yes.
Ms. Hamilton.
Yes.
Mrs. O'Hara.
Yes.
Mr. Ogier.
Yes.
Ms. Alves.
Yes. Discussion by council vote or other action on phase 2 and 3 of sewer projects update / future waste management. Mr. Dory? Hi.
Hello.
So hopefully you guys got the packet that I gave to Moore earlier this week. All right. All right, so as you guys know, the sewer is an enterprise fund. We do not fund our sewers in North Smithfield on a town level. So that means the users basically fund everything for the sewers. We have an enterprise fund that we run that through. part of the enterprise fund ordinance requires that we have 3 months operating expenses on top of 25% of the accumulated depreciation of the capital assets of the fund. The idea of the ordinance is that as the system gets older and older, we have the capital set aside to repair it and/or replace it. That change, the ordinance is relatively new. Up until that point, this town really didn't do anything. We're kind of like a condo association that has a brand-new building. We know in 25 years we're going to have to replace the roof, 10 years we'll have to replace the parking lot, but hell, we like those low condo fees right now. And we're going to sell our condo before any of this comes due. But we've kind of been doing the same thing with our sewers. So we put in this 25% accumulated depreciation requirement on top of 3 months operating 3 months operating expenses. That brings us to, under the current depreciation of the sewer system, we need to have $6.3 million in the bank. We don't have anywhere near that right now. We have about 3.9, maybe $4 million. The new audited reports haven't come out yet. So that leaves us about $2.4, $2.3 million shy, and that's before we spend $1 doing any of the repairs that we need to do and/or maintenance to our infrastructure. So let's give you a little background of where we are financially and kind of how we run the sewers. I know you guys know a lot of this. About 2022, last year, we commissioned a study to study the infrastructure, to have ratepayers commission a report to tell us where we're at. We created an asset hierarchy to look at our sewer assets. We had them conduct an assessment of those assets. We performed a critical risk analysis of those assets, and we identified the best practices for keeping those assets up. From that, we developed a 5-year plan about what we wanted to do to protect those assets and ensure they go forward in the future, so that we don't have a situation like with some of our buildings where they're basically falling apart, and then we're dealing with it. So that report gave us a 5-year plan, and it was going to cost us $3.9 million. Now, we have $3.9 million, but if we spent it all upgrading our system and upgrading our pump stations, we basically have no money left. And the only reason we have $3.9 million right now is because of Dowling Village. We had a huge influx of money that we set aside, but it's not because of year after year long-term planning. So we really haven't spent all the money we needed. The only one we've really worked on right now is Sharon Parkway, because we're replacing it with a new system. I think you guys are aware of that. But the rest of the pump stations, we've done the minimum because we're very worried about spending down the fund balance we currently have without making plans for the future of how we're going to grow that fund and keep it where it needs to be according to the ordinance, and frankly, just good fiscal policy if we want to maintain the system. To that end, we've been, and the replacement of the aging infrastructure. Large parts of our sewer system, some of you may be living on this, are hitting their 40-year mark. So you're going to start seeing failures. And we don't have the money to repair them. So I don't think we have ability under the, and solicitor could correct me, I don't think we have the ability to do special assessments under the program. So it's not like exactly like a condo association where we say, hey, we've done no good planning, here's $5,000, you need to come up with this money this year. We don't, under the, I don't believe under the ordinance we have the ability to do a special assessment. So I question how things will even get repaired because of the past fiscal management of the enterprise fund. So we're looking at maintenance improvements to the pump stations and replacement of the aging infrastructure. So to address this, we looked at the fund balance policy. We looked at maybe lowering it so we didn't have to keep as much on hand. We talked with our ratepayers about what other towns do. We talked with Mr. St. Ange, and we, at this point, think that 25% probably is the responsible number to keep it at, even though it's the higher number. There was talk about 15%, maybe 20%. But right now, given all the input we had, we think 25% is probably the correct place to stay at. And that brings me to where you guys come in. So the current rate right now is $560. we're working with Mr. St. Ange to come up with an increase, and it's gonna be substantial. So poor planning in the past, and poor fiscal responsibility in the past is now gonna impact us going forward, so that we can make the repairs that we need to make, that we know, according to ratepayers, and also set aside enough money that we meet our 25% threshold. It's $560 right now. We're looking at between $675 and $1,000 increase. But like I said, if this had been done in the past, we wouldn't have to be doing this now.
Can I just ask a clarifying question? Because you said increase after that number?
Yes.
So you're saying it's moving from 560 average to 675?
It
Right,
is
so
at 560 now.
But it's moving to the 675, 1,000, or is it 675 and 1,000 on top of
So it
that?
would be, right now, the numbers we're playing with is between 675 and $900, $1,000.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I interpreted you.
So when we do our next budget, in order to make all of this work, we need to do a massive increase. Now, or we're gonna request one. It's up to you guys whether we do it or not, ultimately. But that's what we're doing, and I wanna kind of prepare you guys for this, because without these increases, then we're gonna start to have to make hard choices. Do we set money aside to meet our requirement of 25% under the ordinance? Do we make the repairs that our contractors have identified in the February 2022 report, which, some of which we're making, but we've kind of held off trying to get the fiscal component in place? Or do we just kind of throw caution in the wind, say next generation can deal with it, and when the system fails, you know?
So how quickly does that increase get us to that 25%?
So that's what we're working with Mr. St. Ange on. There's a couple different models we have. So some of the things we've looked at is being able to pay for everything and replace the $3.9 million, which is only kind of going up as we kind of consider how we're going to pay for this. Pay for it up front over 10 years, or pay it over 15 years or 20 years. The problem is our ordinance says 25%. We are nowhere near that with spending money. We've just not been fiscally responsible with the guardianship of our infrastructure. We created it and then had a party. It's kind of like that condo in Florida that collapsed. They knew for years that this was coming, and they just didn't want to spend the money. They didn't want to be the ones that put a stop to the fiscal irresponsibility and not maintaining their infrastructure. So they didn't want to be the board that increased their condo fees. Well, it doesn't matter anymore because the whole thing collapsed. And you see that a lot with condo associations here in Rhode Island. Everybody likes the condo board when they keep the fees low. When they have to do a special assessment, everybody is very angry. But you can't have both. You got to plan. We know what's going to happen. There's a reason why we've been very diligent in moving forward and giving you guys the information that you can go back to your constituents and say, this is why we need to do this. Or don't. I mean, ultimately, I'm giving you information. You guys, ultimately, the deciders for this kind of stuff. But I'm trying to front load this and prepare you now so that when budget season comes, this isn't coming out of left field, like the sewer commission is just kind of, going crazy. And this doesn't really reflect on you guys, because this has been done over since like 1980s, late 1970s, early 80s, when a lot of these sewers went in. There's just no planning. It's a brand new condo. We don't have to worry about the roof that we know is going to go bad. And it just didn't happen. But luckily, we had Dowling Village come in. That gave us a huge boost of revenue. Without that, I don't even know where we'd be right now. So I don't want to squander that 3.9 we have right now. I want to use that plus a modest increase, or it's going to be a large increase. Going back to the ratepayers and telling them this, it's going to be hard. I'm sure they're going to be at the meetings. But it's the only financially and fiscally responsible thing from where I'm standing, where the committee's standing, in order to protect the infrastructure that we've already paid tens, hundreds of millions of dollars for. So, and that's all based off, the number of ratepayers we have, and the goal is to have it work with Mr. St. Ange to come up with an increase that makes sense and where we can fund this, both the projects that we know we have to incur and the fund balance and our operating expenses, because none of it's funded through the town. We have nobody to fall back on.
Yeah.
So I read it, and thank you, it's very comprehensive, and they did a great job. I don't know who that is. Who is it that you had do an assessment of
So
everything?
that's right, Pierce.
Right pairs? They're great. I mean, have you prioritized what things need to be done immediately, and is that something that?
Yes.
Okay. And then the other thing that concerned me in this was that the lack of potential grant funding
So
for
that's-
the town
So
because
that
of.
gets up to phase 2 and phase 3, but that's not.
Yeah.
So we've had issues because we are a rich community.
Yeah.
And so we've parsed this a couple different ways with the powers that be, and from a grant perspective, we have run into a brick wall. We worked with HCH to try to find grants for over a year, or just about a year now, and we have not been able to come up with anything that we qualify for something like phase 2 and phase 3. I don't want to get ahead of myself here. But yeah, grant funding is kind of hard for us for this kind of infrastructure. And the fact that we're an enterprise fund also causes other issues. If we were in a town-wide sewer system, there are other ways of doing these things that aren't particularly available to us in the enterprise fund model. And without getting into, hey, maybe we transition away from an enterprise fund and do something like what Burrillville's doing, where we just bite the bullet and say, it's gonna be a town-wide sewer system. And maybe that's potentially something you guys wanna look at. We've talked about it. I know there are people that regularly attend our meetings that have advocated for us transitioning to a model like Burrillville, where you convince the townspeople that this, from a business perspective, business sustainability perspective, and from a town perspective, is a better model than the enterprise fund, especially with our growth since the 1970s, early 80s. But right now, what I'm concerned about is making the enterprise fund solvent with the responsibilities that we have to maintain the sewer system and meet our 25% goal, which we think is fiscally responsible. And the reason I'm here is because, like I said, come budget season, when we come to you with a number and a projected plan, I don't want this to be coming out of left field. I want to get the juices going and, have you guys ready to explain it to the ratepayers. Because ultimately, it's not my responsibility, it's yours.
So this is just informational tonight, right?
This is
You're not looking for a
informational.
vote or
There's nothing for you to
anything?
vote on, nothing like that at all. Like I said, I like to get out in front of these things, kind of get you guys familiar with it, socialize these issues to you, because this is gonna come up fast,
And so I know you've been looking at modeling, and I know 25% is the number, but if you were to drop it to 20%, would some of that 5% help offset or absorb some of these increases?
Sure, I mean, we could drop it to 0.
No, I'm not.
You know what I'm saying?
I'm just saying, like, well.
So we don't have a good model to look at, like with other towns and what other towns do. Some do 25%, some do 10.
Yeah.
Mr. St. Ange did go and look at other communities, and everybody does something different. 25% is fiscally conservative. The more aggressive you are, the more likely you are going to incur, if there's substantial costs that are incurred,
Right.
you don't have as big of a reserve. And the idea is that 25% is based on, and Mr. St. Ange, correct me if I'm wrong here, as the assets depreciate, the amount that you have to hold in reserve goes up because the assets are older and older.
Right.
And the expectation is you're going to have to replace those sooner. So if we had done this from the get-go, then we would have plenty of money set aside, and there wouldn't be as big of an impact on the ratepayers. But because we're coming to the dance late,
Yeah, I get it. It's an asset management thing.
that's a management problem. But of course, it's not this group, it's many groups since 1978 that there was no, it's a brand-new condo. We don't have to worry about the roof.
So the proposed budget that you have here for '24, what rate is that at?
So I have a proposed fiscal year '24, so that is at the current rate, not moved up. I don't believe that's moved up, right, Mrs. St. Ange?
Say that again, sorry?
The fiscal year 2024 was at 560 still, right? Is where that-
564,
564?
for what? Sorry, I was talking to the
The
solicitor.
fiscal year 2024, the proposed budget,
Yep.
so that was still at the old rate, not with a,
Yeah, you're talking about 560?
yeah.
Yeah, that's the current rate as we are right now, and we had just raised that from the prior year,
Yeah,
which
so
was
that's-
stagnant.
So
before.
I
That's
think,
just using
yeah,
the-
no,
that's
point of
just-
order, I think what
yeah.
Kim is
No.
trying to ask is if it's a 5.6% increase, is that at the 560 number for the rate that's used to the,
I think the answer is yes.
It's a 6%
it's a
increase.
6%
actually.
increase,
So
or is
this
it
would
with the
be
new
for
rates?
the next fiscal year.
Yeah, the
It's
24.
For 24, right?
Yes.
So what's that rate? Like, how much is that increased by?
We don't know yet. That's what we're working with Mr. St. Ange on right now, a final budget rate. Because right now, what we've been looking at is operating expenses and operating revenue, and that's it, divided by the number of units that we have, right? So we've been that's how we keep the low rate. What we want to do now is the operating expenses minus the operating revenue, plus the fund balance requirements, plus our 5-year capital improvement plan. That's where you're gonna get that bump up, because now we're including the need to keep the fund balance at 25% and also pay for the 5-year capital plan, which is $3.9 million. So part of looking at the increase, like we can increase and get ourselves up to 25% over 10 years, 5 years, 15 years, and just say, and that lowers the increase. But what I'm here to tell you tonight is there's going to be a request for an increase, and it's going to not be small. I mean, just,
Okay.
if that makes sense.
So the increase in the budget is just the normal increase for the
Correct.
cost of doing business right now?
Correct.
Then
That's-
there's gonna be an additional increase, which I'm assuming, does that hit your
Correct.
capital, or
Yes.
where's that hit?
Yes, that's to keep the fund, that's to meet the fund balance requirement, which we're not meeting right now, and also to finance the 5-year capital plan as outlaid in our February 2022 report from Wright Pierce about the improvements we needed to make to our infrastructure.
May I?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm confused with
Yeah, I am
this
too, 'cause-
completely.
'cause it's
This-
a large increase, and just say that the
To-
rate's on increase.
Right, this is a lot.
No, the rates have increased marginally, but the rate increases right now, Mr. St. Ange can talk to this, is the rate increases right now do not factor in our fund balance and do not include our 5-year capital plan. It's as if we don't have a fund balance requirement.
Right.
So when these were getting prepared, when these rate increases were made, it wasn't to set aside money, it was like a pay-as-you-go plan. So it didn't factor these in. What we're trying to do now is fix that. So the fiscal year 2024 stuff that you see there right now is not with this. It doesn't include the fund balance requirement, which we've not met, and it doesn't include the 5-year capital plan.
But it includes an increase.
It includes an increase based on operating expenses and operating revenue. So that's the way we've always done it. We've always done it, hey, these are our operating expenses in our budget. This is what we need to increase the rate. So you've always seen usually a marginal
Like
increase.
pennies, right, usually?
Hmm?
It's like usually like pennies or something.
A few
Yeah,
dollars here
small.
and there. And what we're saying is that isn't good enough to meet our ordinance or pay for the $3.9 million in upgrades to our infrastructure. So what you see here is not gonna be what finally comes down. And we'll have it all spelled out
What he's saying
for
is
you.
it's gonna be a bigger number to come.
It's gonna be a bigger number.
I
He's
know, but I'm
teasing.
just trying to-
I'm teasing you, and
See
the
what
thing
that
is,
number
like I've done every other time when I bring something to you, I'm gonna bring you options. These are your options. I'm not just gonna bring you one number, I'm gonna give you options. Different ways of making this work, because, I'm here just to give you the fiscal realities, but you guys have to make it work for the ratepayers and for the townspeople. So when I provide you options, it makes you happy. At least that's what I found in the past. So that's what I'm gonna do. But right now, what I'm trying to do, socialize with you, is that right now, we are not meeting our 25% obligation under the ordinance. We do not have a way to pay for the infrastructure upgrades as identified by ratepayers without just spending down all the money we currently have. And the only reason we really have that much money is because of Dowling Village coming online. It was like a windfall.
So I think one of the questions that may need to be looked at is, that's a large increase, right? I mean, assuming that that's the path that it goes, obviously there's a long way till we get to determine the increase. But I think the commitment, if you're gonna ask that much, to know that these projects are gonna take place within X period, like, I think there needs to be a finite, like, this is the path. I mean, obviously, sometimes things can go awry, but I think if people just feel like they're getting increased, and they're not seeing anything, they're gonna be like, well, where's that money going, right? I mean,
Yeah,
it's gonna end up as a mess.
And that's always one of the challenges with sewers. I mean, sewers are one of those things that you don't think about until it backs up into your house.
Yeah.
So, you know, I can't show people easily a pump station getting fixed. I mean, I think the one where we're replacing everything, Sharon Parkway, was because it was a smell that was affecting the neighbors. So we did prioritize that going up front, and we got a pretty good system that DEM hopefully will approve very soon. We have every reason to believe they are gonna approve it. And then that'll go in, and that'll take Sharon Parkway and the costs associated with Sharon Parkway off the table. But yeah, that's why we got the plan from Wright Pierce. I wanted something that I could give to you, and I still have the fire plan right here about how we implement this. But once we had the plan and looked at our budget, we realized it would be irresponsible just to follow through on the plan, spend everything down, and then go back to a pay-as-you-go model, especially with an aging infrastructure. So I am previewing what is going to come up next. Pending any questions, I can move on to phase 2 and phase 3.
Well, I guess with the department request, and there is backup, because I just see there's some large swings in a few areas, so, like, for instance, just like maintenance agreement, why would a maintenance agreement go down in sewer, like $5,000?
I don't know. I don't have that right in front of me right now.
Okay.
I mean, the budget's pretty lean at the end of the year. You notice, like, the way we've been getting money into our fund balance is, at the end of the year, anything that's left over after our audit, it drops into that 25%. So there's usually not a lot, but that plus the Dowling Village money is how we got up to 3.9.
Okay, we can look at it.
So, can you do me a favor? Can I see the backup for 23, like the, you know,
The actuals?
yes, that has all the backup for the, you know how you do with the budget, all the detailed backup, just so we can see, because it seems like, I mean, that's just one area, $5,000 is down, it just seems like there might be something missing there. I mean, you have to do it tonight, if you can just send it.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is the reason why I wanted to bring it to you. I wanted,
Yeah.
because with a big ask, you have to have, you know, a good reason why you're doing it.
Okay.
Any other questions on the budget issues?
Well, if we do, we know where to find you.
All right, so phase 2, phase 3. This has been an ongoing circular thing in this town for a while now. So phase 2 covers St. Paul area and Great Road. Phase 3 is Liverpool and Tanglewood area. The plans have been on the shelf for a while now, and we've been seeing if we can get that funded. Part of the reason that this came forward was there are a number of houses on Branch Avenue that their septic systems are failing. The systems that these people would have to put in is incredibly expensive because the lots are relatively small. So they have to put in these vertical systems, which are they're more expensive than the typical systems that many of us may have seen in other people's larger lots. So we said, well, can we get this area sewered? Is there a possibility of bringing phase 2 and phase 3 back to life? They're part of our plan, and So we looked at the numbers for Phase 2 to completion right now is about $17.5 million. Phase 3 would be $15.35 million. The cost to each household for these two projects would be between $80,000 and $106,000 per house. So clearly not something that we can do. It wouldn't work.
No.
Part of the cost is because Great Road's a state road, we have to, there's a lot of ledge there. And just the costs of everything has continued to go up since when the projects were initially put out there. We've worked with HCH for a year to try to identify grant sources that could cover this, and they did not come up with anything. We also worked with Alex Pale from RI Rural Water Association. He wasn't able to come up with anything. So at this point, those projects, from my perspective, are basically dead. I can't imagine going to homeowners and asking them to pony up that kind of money in order to get the sewer infrastructure. My concern is that, as you guys heard tonight with like the drinking water issue, all these houses are within the watershed. And I easily envision a situation where this is gonna be mandated from the top down, kind of like cesspools were. You know, initially started just around the Save the Bay, that's all we're gonna do. And then 10 years later, it was every single house in Rhode Island. I'm concerned that being in the watershed around the Blackstone, that at some point we may get a state mandate that says, you gotta connect all these people to sewers that are within the watershed. Maybe it happens, maybe it doesn't, but it's a concern. That's one of the reasons we're looking into this program, as well as helping the people on Branch Avenue. At this point, short federal money or state money to cover the majority of the expenses on these projects, I don't see a way they go forward. So unless you guys can leverage something with our congressional delegation or people with the State House, Phase 2, Phase 3 from the Sewer Commission's perspective are dead. The other thing is we may want to just scrap them off our plans, because there is options to get state funding to help with septic systems. But we cannot get it because we have these areas on our plan for Phase 2 and Phase 3 for sewers. And they will not give us the money for septic systems to help people offset the cost of their septic systems, especially some of these vertical systems, as long as Phase 2 and Phase 3 are part of our plan. So it's a catch-22.
Yeah.
We leave these in as potential sewer plans, then we can't get help with some of our residents for these expensive systems, because we are telling the state, yeah, no, we want to sewer this area.
No, we've been telling them that for 15 years.
We have,
Yeah,
we
that-
have.
that plan.
And we haven't done it.
Hmm.
And it's because it's much too expensive.
Yeah.
And, you know, when Wright Pierce did the numbers, the low-end number was around $82,000 a house. And then the high end, depending on how you count the houses, because there was a disagreement about how many houses we have, and if there was an undercount or an overcount, it came up to 106,000. So clearly not a project that can be done without state or federal help. But if we're not gonna do the project, you know, we might wanna think about just taking these off our plans.
I mean, that's an economic development
Well, that's,
plan, that's what that is.
well,
You know,
you're not wrong. Like, if
yeah.
you wanna economically develop Great Road down
Right.
in that area, or get housing in the old mill, I mean, one of the things that's gonna help those projects move forward is sewers.
Yep.
But we can't afford them, because it's also, we can't afford them because we have an enterprise fund. If we didn't have an enterprise fund, it would be something that we as a town could decide if we wanted to put in sewers to help that business corridor there, to help Branch River, to help put in housing at the old mill. But under the enterprise fund model, it doesn't work without substantial federal or state funding. And over the last year, we have exhausted all the grant prospects that we could. Before I brought this to you, I really wanted to be able to say, we've turned over every rock, turned over every stone. There's nothing for us there. So unless we get federal money or state money, these projects aren't going forward. Or we change it away from an enterprise model. And
I think part of the problem, if you don't mind me saying so, is that you might have the wrong grant writer. We looked at that company and we didn't hire them.
Yeah, so possibly. I mean, but Rhode Island Rural Water Association, basically, we had them both doing the same thing, one for free, one we paid for. And neither of them could come up with grants for us. We either weren't qualified, or things we were qualified, we wouldn't get enough money to cut. This is a large project. And we're not getting the types of commitments that we would need to be able to move forward. I mean, one of the better ones we got, for phase 2, we'll cover it and then maybe we'll give you a grant. Well, I can't go to I mean, you guys would be going to homeowners, not me, but I wouldn't feel comfortable going to homeowners and saying, well, maybe you have to pay $80,000, or maybe not. We don't know, but we're gonna go forward with the project anyways. So we couldn't get that kind of commitment. So we're kind of stuck. So at this point, we're recommending that phase 2 and phase 3, unless we can get federal estate money, we withdraw them, take them off our plan. They're not happening. Not as long as we have an enterprise fund model. It's pie in the sky at this point. And it's preventing us from possibly getting money in a revolving fund that we could use to help people in Branch, even though it's technically not sewer commission thing, but a revolving fund that would help them offset the costs of septic systems. So that's where we're at with phase 2 and phase 3. They either need to go away permanently, or we need to find the funding. At least that's my perspective. Of course, it's up to you guys. Any questions?
It's a lot of information.
Well, I only come with the best stuff, guys, come on.
We can always count on you. No, thank you very much. It's very sad that that didn't go through years and years and years ago. We wouldn't be in this position, you know. And the same issues still exist with the aquifer being there and the river being there and discharge going into the river. I mean, it's just, nothing's changed, so unfortunate.
Any other questions, comments, criticisms, thoughts? No? Am I done?
Look forward to your budget.
I look forward to giving you a budget.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm gonna make a motion to extend the meeting by a half hour. At least this will be probably the first of 2.
It's way more than that, but.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call?
Mr. Biragad.
Yes.
Ms. Hamilton.
Yes.
Mrs. O'Hara.
Yes.
Mr. Ogier.
Yes.
Ms. Alves.
Yes. What is she here for? Oh. Discussion by council vote or other action on appointments of town boards / commissions for look at the attachment for reappointments or vacancies. So, we're gonna go one by one.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to appoint Joshua Woke to fill a 5-year term expiring 11/30/2026 on the Asset Management Commission, sorry.
That's a motion. Do we have a second? Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Biragad.
Yes.
Ms. Hamilton.
Yes.
Mrs. O'Hara. Mr. Ogier.
Yes.
Ms. Alves.
Yes.
I'll make an appointment to reappoint Mary Ellen Rose to the Board of Assessment Review, a 3-year term expiring 11/30/2026.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Biragad.
Yes.
Ms. Hamilton.
Yes.
Mrs. O'Hara. Mr. Ogier.
Yes.
Ms. Alves.
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion to approve David Dela Cruz, a 3-year expiration 11/30/2026, to the Budget Committee.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Biragad.
Yes.
Ms. Hamilton.
Yes.
Mrs. O'Hara. Mr. Ogier.
Yes.
Ms. Alves.
Yes.
I'd like to make I'd like to make, oh my God. I'd like to nominate John Massey to a completion of a 3-year term expiring 11/30/2026 to the Conservation Commission, and also, oh, let's do that one first, please.
That's a TA appointment.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
With TC approval. We need to approve it, though.
I'm sorry.
We have to approve it.
Are you reappointing them?
I think he wants to appoint it, right?
I knew you would. Okay, thank you.
Yes, council members, I'd like to reappoint Mr. John Massey for completion of a 3-year. And do you want me to do them separate, or would you like to do them both? Because also Kayla Massey would like to be reappointed.
Wonderful.
So I'm reappointing them.
So I'll make a motion to approve the administrator's recommendation to reappoint John and Kayla Massey.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Biragad.
Yes.
Ms. Hamilton.
Yes.
Mrs. O'Hara. Mr. Ogier.
Yes.
Ms. Alves.
Yes.
What's the next one?
What is, I'm sorry, Joanne, the next page says name spot open. John Russo would not like to be reappointed. Is that for the economic?
No, he does not want to be reappointed. We have no nominations for that right now.
No, but is it for the economic?
Oh.
That's for the council.
Oh, these are supposed to be fixed.
Oh, they get cut off?
Conservation.
Yeah,
Commission.
conservation.
Okay.
That was supposed to be corrected. Sorry about that.
We have 2 spots open.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
All right, so the next one is Economic Development Commission.
Councilors, I would like to appoint Gail Berlinghoff, an individual that needs no introduction. So that's my appointment to the Economic Development.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the nomination of Gail Berlinghoff to the Economic Development Commission for filling a 5-year term expiring 11/30/2028.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Biragad.
Yes.
Ms. Hamilton.
Yes.
Mrs. O'Hara. Mr. Ogier.
Yes.
Ms. Alves.
Yes.
Okay, nothing for Hallowell. I'd like to make a motion to appoint Jeffrey Fontaine to the Historic District Commission, who would like to be reappointed to fill a 3-year term expiring 11/30/2026.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Biragad.
Yes.
Ms. Hamilton.
Yes.
Mrs. O'Hara.
Yes.
Mr. Ogier.
Yes.
Ms. Alves.
Yes. Juvenile Hearing Board.
Councilors, I'd like to appoint Mr. Robert Gernon to the Juvenile Hearing Board.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the administrator's appointment of Robert Gernon to the Juvenile Hearing Board for a 3-year term expiring 11/30/2026.
Second.
It's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Biragad.
Yes.
Ms. Hamilton.
Yes.
Mrs. O'Hara. Mr. Ogier.
Yes.
Ms. Alves.
Yes.
Before we continue, I don't know if this is going to be speaking out of order, but I think, I mean, if you look at the last 2 meetings we've had.
We have one more application.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
It's not mine.
Juvenile, let me just do it.
Okay, I'm sorry. I
Okay.
apologize.
All right, that's okay, we're on a
I was
roll.
wondering where you were going
We're on
with
a
that.
roll. I'd like to appoint Mr. Robert Storm to the Juvenile Hearing Board for a 3-year term expiring 11/30/2026.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Biragad.
Yes.
Ms. Hamilton.
Yes.
Mrs. O'Hara. Mr. Ogier.
Yes.
Ms. Alves.
Yes. The next one is the Municipal Building Review Task Force.
If I may, if the last 2 meetings that we've had with the task force, I mean, as a task force, I thought were extremely productive. To be very honest with you, when we first appointed ourselves as task force, I was a little apprehensive, but I got to tell you, I was pretty impressed because I think we all learned a lot more in those 2 meetings than we did, in all this time. And decisions were able to be made immediately. Invoices for work orders, we're able to say, okay, for instance, the roof, you're able to say, okay, you voted on it, let's go forward with it. everything was done in real time. My suggestion is that the council continue as the Municipal Building Review Task Force, at least for the time being, until the repairs are done. And then when the repairs are done and we decide a direction that we want to go in, then we create a new Municipal Building Review Task Force. But right now, I think how we're getting things in real time, we're making decisions, we're hearing things directly instead of 2 weeks later when we ask questions, the questions are answered immediately instead of saying, hey, can you find out about this? Okay, I'll find out about it. Then wait 2 weeks for another meeting, and then we find out, then it gets back to us, then we have a follow-up question. We're asking, Paulette, you asked 1 million questions because a lot of your questions were follow-up questions, and they were answered immediately. You're not gonna have that if we have a go-between. I think the move right now is to put the brakes on creating a new task force. We remain as the task force, and until at least the repairs are done, because I gotta be honest, I think everybody's doing a really good job on it, and things are getting done.
I agree 100%. I was going to say that similar, not verbatim,
Yeah.
but I was going to say, I think until we get through the immediate repairs and we pick a direction, I don't want to, I think if we were to appoint people right now, I think we'd kind of be setting them up for failure.
Exactly.
And I think we should at least kind of get through the immediate repairs, which I think we're moving steadily on, and pick that next step and then fill in a point. In the meantime, we can have a public hearing and have people come and offer ideas when we get to the next steps. But, I think we made a lot of decisions, and I think that building is at least in a better shape today than it was yesterday, so,
Yeah.
or will be.
I mean, look at the roof you guys voted on. I wasn't here, but I was watching. It's getting done now. It's in the pipeline. It's getting done. Instead of it going before a committee, then the committee coming before us, and we go tell the committee, okay, now you go back. We eliminated that whole step.
Yeah.
And we went right to it.
No, I have to agree. It's just so much easier going right to the source, and, the calls are less than an hour, and we're just moving
Exactly.
along, and,
Exactly.
I mean, last week we approved like 4 projects,
Right.
and, and now we know, like this, last week we did them 2 weeks in a row, but now the next one isn't until next week, right? The 21st or something, but yeah, at least we, now we're having conversations with them directly and with the contractor too, so I would like to maybe hold on to these applications, Joanne, like even if you get more in, yeah, and then once we get to the point that, we'll probably redo the resolution and maybe name it something differently and, start fresh. But if you can just hold on to these applications, because then once we're ready, maybe we can just reach out to people and see if they're still interested.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I don't want to get too far behind the 8 ball, though, so I think we should have conversations. I think we should figure out what our next project will be and try to figure out to be specific in our resolution, right? Because I think it was very broadly defined. I'd like to see responsibilities. I'd like to see timelines. I'd like to see a number of things that, I think you said before about setting people up for failure. I think that's the main reason, unless we're very, very specific. So I'd like to have discussions about it, and, having people come in and talk to us about it, I think is a great idea.
I think if the intent is, I know there was discussions during the vote was to get something to 2024. I think you're gonna have to have a decision and start having some type of conceptual by March.
Right, that's
Or
what I'm saying,
early
so I don't
April,
want to wait
So
too
yeah,
long
no.
to begin the process of a new resolution and going through
Right.
any, gyrations to get to that point and then be able to pull the trigger, right? So I think it's important that we get this at least
I agree.
in the pipeline.
Okay, so we're gonna put that on hold for now?
Yes.
And just keep it as the council? All right, the next one is Personnel Board.
Councilors, receive the nominations, on the appointment there of Sandy Soares, which appointment 3-year expire November 30th, 2025. That's my appointment.
I'll make a motion to approve the TA's recommendation for appointment to the Personnel Board, Sandy Soares, for 2 years.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Biragad.
Yes.
Ms. Hamilton?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Hara? Mr. Ogier?
Yes.
Ms. Alves?
Yes.
Councilors, 3-year expire 11/30/2026. Appointing Robert Gernon, paralegals
I'll make a motion to approve the TA's recommendation for the 3-year term of Robert Gurnon, Carol Drainville, and Susan Bernier.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Biragad.
Yes.
Ms. Hamilton.
Yes.
Mrs. O'Hara.
Yes.
Mr. Ogier.
Yes.
Ms. Alves.
Yes. Planning board?
I'd like to make a motion to nominate Cynthia Roberts for first alternate 1 year with an expiration of 11/30/2024. Is that correct?
No, I think that's
1
open
year.
if she,
Wait a minute.
she's looking for
She's
the
looking for
actual
a
spot.
5-year? So do we have a
Yeah,
date?
Yes, so-
A date
Down below.
yeah, 5-year term, 2028. It's the last one.
way down here?
Way down.
Okay, so, all right, let me just do that again. I'll make a motion to approve Cynthia Roberts to be appointed to a 5-year term on the planning board expiring 11/30/2028.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Biragad.
No.
Ms. Hamilton.
Yes.
Ms. O'Hara.
Yes.
Mr. Ogier.
Yes.
Ms. Alves.
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion to reappoint Cheryl Marandola to as a second alternate. Is that it, Joanne?
She doesn't want the first.
Don't they normally slide up?
So the
They
first
should-
alternate
Yeah,
would...
she should
Unless she
slide
doesn't
up.
want it, right?
Yeah, she should.
Correct.
Okay,
to the
so
first.
Cheryl Marandola to be reappointed to the first alternate 1-year position,
Correct.
expiring 11/30/2024.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Biragad.
Yes.
Ms. Hamilton.
Yes.
Mrs. O'Hara. Mr. Ogier.
Yes.
Ms. Alves.
Yes. So we are going to leave the second alternate open. That one's still open, right?
Yes.
And then Public Art Advisory, there's no applications for that.
No.
Public Safety Commission,
I'd like to nominate Darrell Poe for a 3-year term to the Public Safety Commission, expiring 11/30/2026.
Second.
we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Biragad.
Yes.
Ms. Hamilton.
Yes.
Ms. O'Hara.
Yes.
Mr. Ogier.
Yes.
Ms. Alves.
Yes. Sewer Commission, we have a spot open with no applications. 2 spots open, actually, with no applications. Zoning Board,
I would like to nominate Bethany Benoit
First alternate.
to a
there's
second.
spot open, though.
So how does this one work too? They
Alternate?
would bump up or no? Did they want second?
Because there's an open spot, not an alternate spot.
Correct. I'm wondering if this,
Do we want to reach out to them?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's
So I was
reach
gonna
out
say,
and
yeah.
hold off,
Mhm.
yeah.
Okay, so we'll have to come back to that one. Then we have Tree Warden.
I need to look at my open gov.
Or to reappoint Stanley Zuber as the 3 wardens of town of Smithfield.
Okay.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the
No, we don't need
We
administrative.
don't need to.
No approval.
No.
Good
You're in
for
his
you.
own Paulette.
Water Supply Review Committee, that spot's open.
That's it.
And that's it, right?
That's it.
Discussion by council vote or other action on trimming overlying trees affecting power lines. Ms. O'Hara?
I've been getting, calls from people that live at the top of Smithfield Hill Road. It's the people on the right hand, they're ancient trees that fork out, part over people's property, but I think most of the trunks are in the setback. The wires go through to the other side. The people on the other side, it's on their land, so they've been, trimming them down or cutting them down. If those wires are blown down, there are substitutes up there. So, and water doesn't flow up, it's gonna flow down. They're gonna be a mess. There's other, trees like that all the wires go in, all circuit people. They lose the wires, there's not much left. So, the ones that are very in need of being done now are those two huge trees at the top of Woonsocket Hill Road. I'm trying to, the old Flower House, when they first built. Right across on that side where there's the stone wall. Because when it gets windy, there's nothing harboring those trees. So if you can help us out, you're helping them out.
Two things that come to mind real quick. First of all, they would have to be, if they're in the town's right of way, then the town would be responsible. If they're unhealthy trees. If they're healthy trees, then we just appointed Stanley Zuber, that they could take a look at Zuber.
I would, I don't think.
Stanley Tree Company. So if it's a healthy tree and it's in the town right away, it would be trimmed back to, but it wouldn't be, we're not an advocate of taking down healthy trees. If it's on private property, the town should not be touching it at all.
Now, people who have built houses next to swales on Greenville Road, when you build that house, you have a swale about 6 feet deep. They make you plant seedlings. Well, if you know anything about running water, and they're a little stronger on land, they end up going towards the houses, every single one. And the state says you gotta plant the trees in the swale. Like, you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. A lot of the houses are becoming affected.
Council, we're going to have to take a look at the trees, the property where they're located, the
Certainly
condition
will.
of the trees. I certainly cannot commit the town to going in and taking down trees until the Director of Public Works has the overview of
And
all
who's
these
in
things.
charge of cleaning all those swales on Greenville Road, the state?
It's Greenville Road, yes.
Good, we'll give them a call. After 15 years, they get full of wild leaves.
Yeah?
And they're not flowing over into Todd's Pond. And they've even put a, what do they call it? Cape Cod
Cape Cod berms?
Yeah, on part of that road because the water's flowing down and going in to the old farmhouse on the other side. And they've even dug some gullies on one side, on the upside of that road. So,
Well, I'll ask the Director of Public Works to take a look at those trees and see,
I think it's been
determine if
brought
the...
to his attention.
I'm sorry, what?
He may have been aware, and they said that's private property.
I think this issue has been brought up about 2 years ago, so we'll revisit it. I could be wrong if that's,
Oh, I just want to assure the voters that are calling, the citizens that we give, at least give them answers. We have to have that, give them that courtesy at least.
well, actually, I called Mr. Floro twice now and left messages. I'm not sure, so I won't say anymore because it's in public.
Okay, well,
I haven't heard back from him.
maybe you should forward.
Okay.
Okay. All right, I skipped an
Okay.
agenda item.
Thank you.
Discussion by council vote or other action on request for planner to review wetlands at Scouters Hall for multi-generational advisory committee. This is what Mr. Beauregard was talking about earlier. At the last multi-generational committee meeting, we discussed to ask the planner to look at the wetland delineation at
Right.
the lot, just so we could be proactive going forward, because in the event that we can't get some sort of drawing from BH&A to see what we could actually do on the Hollow property for $4 million, we want to be proactive and maybe have to go back to Scouters Hall so we can get the grant going and get the construction of the multi-generational facility going. So I just wanted to get a vote. I know Mr. Carullo is already going to look into it, but I just wanted to bring it to the council so that everyone knew that he was going to start looking into the wetlands at that facility, and then he was going to report back at the next committee meeting that we'll have after the first of the year.
Can I just ask a question, since we may vote on it? the assessment of the wetlands, do you know if he's going to get a site surveyor or an engineer to help determine? Because I know with the wetland standards changing, they're not as clear cut as just saying it's so far back. Each area is identified a little bit differently according to DEM, so it may be a little more. I just want to make sure it's like completely accurate before and what cost that would be and how we're going to fund it.
Yeah, I mean, there was nothing talked about as to going out and actually having a price. I think he was gonna look into what he already had in his files, and maybe just have a discussion with somebody, but to go out and actually get a proposal and stuff, we hadn't gotten to that point yet. It was just basically giving him, you know, the okay just to look at what he's already had and maybe just talk to some individuals that might have known some of the information.
Yeah, because I know that's what happened at Hallowell. They were relying on some of the maps from DEM prior to the changes of the town, and those changes kind of the stricter standards, so they had to go actually get on the ground and resurvey. So that's what I was
So it might
wondering.
have to be, you know, more involved than that, but for right now, it was just basically he was gonna try and find out what he could for the next meeting, and then that way we know whether or not we need to, you know,
Go down
come
that
back to
path.
the council and do a vote to maybe go back to Scouters or whatever we're gonna do so that we can start going forward with this project.
Yeah, I agree. This is the right move. Obviously, Hallowell would be great if we could get it there, but they came up with a $14 million number. And
Oh,
even if they
yeah.
were off by 50%, even if it's $7 million, it's still, I think it's the right move. Ideally, Hallowell would be great, but if it turns out it doesn't work out, we gotta be ready to turn around and get this thing going. And this is the first step to do that. So this is actually a good step in the right direction.
So did we just wanna make I don't even know if we need to do a vote. It's just really letting you know that Mr. Carullo is just gonna look into it. But like I said, there hasn't been any authorization to spend any money. He hasn't come to the, back to the committee, so it's really just an informational, it's just informational, just to let everyone know that that's what direction he was gonna start working in until our next meeting.
And it's worth noting too that the multi-generational committee, they're all on board with this plan too.
Yeah, they just wanna see something go, and I just can't, like you said, I can't imagine anything coming down from that price tag to fit within that $4 million, so.
And Ray Pendergast made a good point at that meeting, saying by having it there, we're also saving Scouters Hall, so that it won't be just another building we have to knock down later on.
Right. Yeah.
I just want to be on the record again. The $4 million, when you're talking about the 14 million, you have to pretend that the $4 million was never obtained by the town.
Okay.
Because of that public hearing, we're convoluting the two, and we said, we have option A, now we have the 4 million, let's do both at the same time. But there's still two separate lanes on the road, even though they're merging in the Hallowell, like, committee's, conversations that you want me to have with Hallowell, there's still two separate lanes. So it's like a temporary detour until we figure out kind of what we're doing, that's all. Just want to be crystal clear about that.
Okay.
Sorry for more notes, Joanne.
All right, so we don't need a motion or anything,
No.
it's just
No,
really
that's fine.
informational that's.
Yeah, makes sense.
Okay, next one is discussion by council vote or other action on adoption of resolution for Juneteenth. Mr. Zlolinski.
Councilors, you have a resolution in front of you. Last paragraph could use a little cleaning up. You'll see there that it says June 19, 2023. It should read, or something to the effect, I'll ask the solicitor, June 19th of any year beginning in 2024. That's a budgeting process that we should have. But I think that North Smithfield is one of 4 communities in Rhode Island. It's a federal holiday, it's a state holiday, and there are 3 other communities that are in the process of adopting this and putting it before their council. So it's before you for your consideration.
So does this have to go into everyone's union contract as one of their holidays, or?
It would. We're certainly not expecting any pushback on it. Side talks with Mr. Senarini, who is the local, State 94, he said this would be okay.
So, I don't believe it's been adopted as a state holiday yet, though, has it?
I was told it was.
It has now? Okay. All right. Thank you.
So then all it would just be is the updated date to say it would start in 2024 and then
Any year
thereafter.
beginning in 2020.
Each year beginning.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the resolution for, how's it on the agenda? I'll make a motion to adopt the resolution for Juneteenth as outlined and prepared by the administrator.
With correction?
Oh, with the correction to note starting in June 19th of 2024 and then every year thereafter.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Biragad.
Yes.
Ms. Hamilton.
Yes.
Ms. Zohara.
No.
Mr. Ogier.
Yes.
Ms. Alves.
Yes. Okay, next one is open forum, agenda items only pursuant to 42-46-6D, maximum 15 minutes. Anyone like to speak? Did you want to speak? No?
You've been sitting there very patiently, Richard.
Oh, no. Did you want to speak about anything?
Oh, God. Well, thank you for staying,
Oh,
both
okay.
of you.
Okay. All right, anyone else want to speak before we, all right, last chance, okay. Next item is executive session, discussion by council vote or other action pursuant to Rhode Island General Law -42-46-5A5. Any discussions or considerations related to the acquisition or lease of real property for public purposes or of the disposition of publicly held property wherein advanced public information would be detrimental to the interests of the public. 1, potential acquisition of land. And B, discussion by council vote or other action pursuant to Rhode Island General Law 42-46-5A2, sessions pertaining to collective bargaining or litigation, or work sessions pertaining to bargaining or litigation or potential litigation.
I'll make
Sorry, so that would be potential litigation with 2 matters.
I'll make a motion to move into executive session.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Biragad.
Yes.
Ms. Hamilton.
Yes.
Ms. Zohara.
Yes.
Mr. Ogier. Ms. Alves.
Yes.
You might want to extend the meeting.
Oh.
To extend the meeting,
10 minutes.
do I have to do it in a half hour?
You don't have, you can
And
do
I
not
do
to
a
exceed
half
half
hour.
hour.
We have
Do you
3
think we'll be
items.
done in a half hour? All right, so not to exceed a half hour
Second?
after the 10:30 extension.
Second?
We have roll call and second. Sorry, we have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Mr. Biragad.
Yes.
Ms. Hamilton.
Yes.
Ms. Zohara.
Yes.
Mr. Ogier.
Yes.
Ms. Alves.
Yes.